Good afternoon, everyone.
Good, how are you?
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Ed Flynn, and I'm the City Council President. Viewers can watch the council meeting live on YouTube by visiting boston.gov/citycouncil-tv. I'd like to ask my colleagues and those in attendance to please silence your cell phones, electronic devices. Thank you. I would also ask everyone to be respectful of each other and do not disrupt the meeting, this public meeting, while you are here. If you are disruptive, you will be asked to leave, and if you fail to comply, you will be escorted out. Again, we ask for your patience and for respect of this body. Please also note that according to City Council rules, there are no signs allowed in this chamber. Mr. Clerk, will you please call the roll to ascertain the presence of a quorum, please?
Councilor Arroyo. Present. Councilor Baker. Councilor Bach. Present. Councilor Brayton. Present. Councilor Edwards. Councilor Fernandez Anderson. Present. Councilor Flaherty. Here. Councilor Flynn.
Here.
Councilor Lara. Councilor Louis-Jean. Here. Councilor Mejia. Councilor Murphy. Present. And Councilor Worrell. We have a quorum.
I have been informed by the clerk that a quorum is present. This week's clergy is Reverend Kenneth Sims from New Hope Baptist Church. Reverend Sims was invited by City Councilor Mejia. Councilor Mejia, if you would come to the podium, please.
Good afternoon. Thank you, Councilor Flynn. Really excited to present our clergy for this afternoon. Reverend Kenneth Sims was born and raised in Boston, Massachusetts. And for the past 32 years, he has been married to the lovely Charlene Monique Sims. From this union was born one son, 3 daughters, and he is also blessed with 2 precious granddaughters. Reverend Sims was licensed to preach the gospel in 2003 by New England Hope Baptist Church, Boston. He prepared for preaching ministry at Gordon Connoll Theological Seminar, Center for Urban Ministries Education. Reverend Sims was ordained in 2006 by the United Baptist Convention of Massachusetts, Rhode Island, and New Hampshire, and served as the assistant pastor of New Hope Baptist Church, Boston, for 7 years. On April 28, 2013, Reverend Sims was unanimously voted in and installed as the new senior pastor of New Hope Baptist Church in Boston, where he currently serves. Reverend Sims loves both God and people, and he strives to make a difference in the lives of as many as he can through his service. And I would just have to say is that during COVID, Reverend Sims was a partner with our office in making sure that a lot of the families who needed relief were able to access food and other resources. So I just want to say thank you, Reverend Sims, for your leadership and your support in serving our most needy during COVID. Thank you. And I'll kick it over to you.
Thank you, Councilor Mejia. Thank you for this wonderful opportunity to come and pray with you. To our City Councilor President, to the City Councilors, to the community, to everyone that is present, good morning to you. I bring you greetings from New Hope Baptist Church, Hyde Park, Massachusetts, where I have the privilege to serve as their senior pastor. As many know, this week is the most important week, I believe, in the Christian church. It is Holy Week, beginning on this past Sunday, Palm Sunday, and we will go through Holy Week, Monday, Thursday, Good Friday, which speaks of the Passion of Christ, and then Sunday we will climax this wonderful week with Resurrection Sunday, or Easter, as many know it as. And so it's a privilege to be here today. I usually host a noonday prayer at New Hope on Wednesdays, and I very seldom not do that, but I thought it was equally important that I be here to pray for and with our city councilors and the community and all the work that you're doing. I really appreciate your service, and we're going to pray God's continued blessings upon you and the peace and prosperity of this great city called Boston. With that, let's pray. O Lord, our Lord, how excellent is thy name in all the earth. Father, we come this morning thanking you for this beautiful day that you have given us. God, we ask for your presence and your blessings to be upon this all-important Boston City Council meeting and hearing on today. We thank you for our city councilors, God. We thank you for their service. We thank you for their heart. I just pray that, God, you would continue to grant them wisdom, that they might make decisions that first represent and please you, and then would be for the benefit, blessing, and benefit of this great city called Boston. So God, we invite your presence in. I pray that you would guard every heart. I pray that you would guard every mind. I pray for our city councilors, God. I pray for your protection upon them. Bless them, their families, all that they endeavor to do. I pray that you would keep them in your care. Let us sense your presence in this session this afternoon, God. We pray again for your peace and for your blessings. Bless everything that's going to be discussed. Bless this agenda on this afternoon, God. We pray that your will would be done on earth just as it is in heaven. So, God, we thank you today. We give your awesome name praise, and we pray this blessing in the name of your wonderful Son, Jesus Christ. Amen.
Thank you. Thank you, Reverend. And if we're able to stand, if you're able to stand and join us in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance. Thank you, Reverend Sims, and thank you, Councilor Mejia, for inviting Reverend Sims. And Reverend Sims, thank you for those warm greetings and wonderful prayer. Thank you. Yeah. Mr. Clerk, please let the record reflect that Councilor Baker, Councilor Lara, and Councilor Worrell are present.
Yes.
We're on to the approval of the minutes. Seeing and hearing no discussion on this matter, the chair moves to approve the minutes from the last meeting as presented. All those in favor of approving the minutes from last meeting say aye. Aye. All opposed say nay. Thank you. The meeting minutes of the last meeting stand as approved. Communication from Her Honor the Mayor. Mr. Clerk, please read docket 0480 to 0501 together.
Docket number 0480, message in order for the annual appropriation and tax order for fiscal year 2023, filed in the office of the City Clerk on April 11th, 2022. Docket number 0481, message in order for the annual appropriation for the School Department for fiscal year 2023, filed in the office of the City Clerk on April 11th, 2022. Docket number 0482, message in order approving an appropriation of $40 million to the Other Post-Employment Benefits, OPEB, Liability Trust Fund established under Section 20 of the Massachusetts General Law, Chapter 32B, filed by the Office of the City Clerk on April 11th, 2022. Docket number 0483, message in order approving an appropriation of $1,600,000 from the city's capital grant fund to address the impact of transportation network services on municipal roads, bridges, and other transportation infrastructure. or any other public purpose substantially related to the operation of transportation network services in the city. Such funds will be transferred and credited to the Capital Grant Fund from revenue received from the Commonwealth Transportation Infrastructure Enhancement Trust Fund, filed in the office of the city clerk on April 11th, 2022. Docket number 0484, message and order authorizing the city of Boston to enter into one or more leases, lease purchase, or installment sales agreements in fiscal year 2023 in an amount not to exceed $36 million. These funds are to be used by various city departments for the acquisition of equipment in furtherance of their respective governmental functions. The list of equipment includes computer equipment, hardware and software, motor vehicles and trailers, ambulances, firefighting equipment, office equipment, telecommunications equipment, photocopying equipment, medical equipment, school and educational equipment, school buses, parking meters, street lighting installation, traffic signal equipment, and equipment functionally related to and components of the foregoing. Filed in the office of the city clerk on April 11th, 2022. Docket number 0485, message and order approving an appropriation of $550,370,000 for the acquisition of interest in land or acquisition of assets, or the landscaping, alteration, remediation, rehabilitation, improvement of public land, the construction, reconstruction, rehabilitation, improvement, alteration, remodeling, enlargement, demolition, removal, or extraordinary repairs of public buildings, facilities, assets, works, or infrastructure, for the cost of feasibility studies or engineering or architectural services for plans and specifications, for the development, design, purchase, and installation of computer hardware and software, and computer-assisted integrated financial management and accounting systems, and any and all costs incidental or related to the above described projects, for the purposes of various city departments, including Boston Center for Youth and Families, Department of Innovation and Technology, Environment, Fire, Neighborhood Development, Office of Arts and Culture, Parks and Recreation, Police, Property Management, Public Works, and Transportation Departments, Boston Public Library, Boston Redevelopment Authority, and Public Health Commission, filed in the office of the city clerk on April 11th, 2022. Docket number 0486, message and order approving an appropriation of $138,535,000 for the acquisition of interest in land or the acquisition of assets or the landscaping, alteration, remediation, rehabilitation, or improvement of public land, the construction, reconstruction, rehabilitation, improvement, alteration, remodeling, enlargement, demolition, removal, or extraordinary repairs of public buildings, facilities, assets, works, or infrastructure, for the cost of feasibility studies or engineering or architectural services for plans and specifications, for the development, design, purchase, and installation of computer, hardware, or software, and computer-assisted integrated financial management and accounting systems, and any and all costs incidental related to the above described projects for the purposes of the Boston Public Schools, filed in the office of the city clerk on April 11, 2022. Docket number 0487, message and order authorizing a limit for the Boston Public Schools revolving fund for fiscal year 2023 to support the maintenance and repair of Boston Public School facilities, including custodial and utility costs for extended building time, floor refinishing, landscaping, and building repairs. Receipts from lease, permit for use, and parking fees for Boston Public School facilities will be deposited in the fund. Boston Public Schools will be the only unit authorized to expend from the fund, and these expenditures shall not exceed $2,200,000. Docket number 0488, message and order authorizing a limit for the Boston Public Schools revolving fund for fiscal year 2023 for Boston Public Schools transportation costs, including bus and public transportation costs. This revolving fund shall be credited with revenue received by Boston Public School Department for the provision of transportation to groups and entities for field trips and activities other than transportation to and from school. Receipts and resulting expenditures from this fund shall not exceed $100,000. Docket number 0489, message in order authorizing a limit for the Boston Public Schools revolving fund for fiscal year 2023 to repair and purchase Boston Public Schools computer technology, including computers, mobile devices, and instructional software. This revolving fund shall be credited with any and all receipts from equipment sales and repair fees for Boston Public School technology. Receipts and resulting expenditures from this fund shall not exceed $2 million. Docket number 0490, message in order authorizing a limit for the Boston Police Department revolving fund for fiscal year 2023 to support the K-9 unit's training program for officers and police dogs from non-City of Boston law enforcement agencies. The Special Operating Division will charge tuition and other fees to outside law enforcement agencies for the K-9 unit. The tuition and other fees by outside agencies will be used to purchase training equipment, certify instructors, update facilities, and provide funds for other training needs not otherwise budgeted. The Special Operations Division will be the only unit authorized to expend from the fund, and such expenditures shall be capped at $125,000. 2-minute break. Docket number 0491, message in order authorizing a limit for the Boston Police Department revolving fund for fiscal year 2023 to pay salaries and benefits of employees and to purchase supplies and equipment necessary to operate the Police Department Fitness Center. Revenue from this fund is derived from monthly membership fees. Receipts and resulting expenditures from this fund shall not exceed $125,000. Docket number 0492, message in order authorizing a limit for the Boston Centers for Youth and Families, BCYF revolving fund for fiscal year 2023 to pay salaries and benefits of employees and to purchase supplies and equipment necessary to operate the City Hall child care. This revolving fund shall be credited with any and all receipts from tuition paid from parents or guardians for children enrolled at the center. Receipts and resulting expenditures from this fund shall not exceed $900,000. Docket number 0493, message in order authorizing a limit for the Mayor's Office of Arts and Culture revolving fund for fiscal year 2023 to purchase goods and services to support the operation of the Strand Theater. The revolving fund shall be funded by receipts from rental fees for the use of the Strand Theater. The Mayor's Office of Culture and Arts and Culture will be the only unit authorized to expend from the fund, and such expenditures shall be capped at $300,000. Docket number 0494, message in order authorizing a limit for the Mayor's Office of Arts and Culture revolving fund for fiscal year 2023 to purchase goods and services to support public art to enhance the public realm throughout the City of Boston. This revolving fund shall be funded by receipts from easements within a public way granted by the Public Improvement Commission. The Mayor's Office of Arts and Culture will be the only unit authorized to expend from the fund, and such expenditures shall be capped at $120,000. Docket number 0495, message in order authorizing a limit for the Mayor's Office of Tourism, a revolving fund for fiscal year 2023 to purchase goods and services to support events and programming on and around City Hall Plaza, to advance tourism and promote participation in public celebrations, civic and cultural events. This revolving fund shall be funded by receipts from payments for the use of City Hall Plaza pursuant to City of Boston Code Ordinance 11-7.14. The Mayor's Office of Tourism will be the only unit authorized to expend from the fund, and such expenditures shall be capped at $150,000. Docket number 0496, Message in order authorizing a limit for the Law Department revolving fund for fiscal year 2023 to purchase goods and services for repairs to city property. The revolving fund shall be funded by receipts from recoveries from damages to city property caused by third parties. The Law Department will be the only unit authorized to expend from the fund, and such expenditures shall be capped at $300,000. Docket number 0497. Message in order authorizing a limit for the Distributed Energy Resource Revolving Fund for fiscal year 2023 to facilitate the purchase of offsets of greenhouse gas emissions, which shall be associated with a portion of the electricity consumed by the city annually, and to operate, maintain, monitor, and expand the city's existing solar arrays and the Boston Public Schools combined heat and power facilities. The revolving fund shall be credited with any and all receipts from the sale of renewable and alternative energy certificates and demand response program revenues produced by combined heat and power units located at Boston Public School sites and solar renewable energy certificates produced by the city's photovoltaic arrays. Receipts and resulting expenditures from this fund shall not exceed $150,000. Docket number 0498. Message in order authorizing a limit for the Environment Conservation Commission revolving fund for fiscal year 2023 for the purpose of securing outside consultants, including engineers, wetland specialists, wildlife biologists, and other experts in order to aid in the review of proposed projects to the Commission, per the city's ordinance protecting local wetland and promoting climate change adaptation. The revolving fund shall be funded by receipts from fees imposed by the Commission for the purpose of securing outside consultants. The Environment Department will be the only department authorized to expend from the fund, and such expenditures shall be capped at $50,000. Docket number 0499. Message in order approving an appropriation of $500,000 from the city's Boston Equity Fund to create a special revenue project grant in order to support equity applicants and licensees as defined by the equity program, and to establish and operate a cannabis business in the city of Boston. The fund shall be credited to the Special Revenue Grant Fund from the Boston Equity Fund, established pursuant to City of Boston Ordinances, Chapter 8, Section 13, establishing the equitable regulation of the cannabis industry in the city of Boston. Docket number 0500. Message in order approving an appropriation for $4,560,000 from the 21st Century Fund, also known as the Public Educational or Governmental Access and Cable Relegated Fund, also known as PEG, pursuant to Section 53F 3-4 of Chapter 44 of the General Laws, and to the PEG Access Cable Related Grant for cable-related purposes, consistent with the franchise agreement between the cable operator and the city, including but not limited to supporting public, educational, or governmental access cable TV services, monitoring compliance of cable operator with the franchise agreement, or preparation of renewal of the franchise license. And docket number 50501. Message in order authorizing the appropriation of $1,400,000 from the income of the George Francis Parkman Fund. The funds are to be expended under the direction of the Commissioner of Parks and Recreation for the maintenance and improvement of Boston Common and parks, in existence since January 12, 1887.
Thank you, Mr. Clerk. Docket 0480 to 0501 will be referred to the Committee on Ways and Means. Mr. Clerk, please read docket 0502, please.
Docket number 0502. Message in order approving an appropriation of $1,423,386 for the administrative and operating expenses of the City of Boston Community Preservation Committee, also known as CPC, for the fiscal year 2023, and a further appropriation order in the amount of $38,861,894 from the Community Preservation Fund estimated annual revenues for fiscal year 2023 to be appropriated and reserved for future appropriations.
Thank you. Docket 0502 will be referred to the Committee on Community Preservation Act. Mr. Clerk, please read docket 0503 and 0504 together.
Docket number 0503, message and order authorizing the City of Boston to accept and expend the amount of $394,500,000 in the form of a grant awarded by the United States Department of Treasury to be administered by the City of Boston's Chief Financial Officer, Collector Treasurer. This grant payment is made from the Coronavirus State and Local Fiscal Recovery Fund, SLFRF, in the Treasury of the United States, established by Section 9901 of the American Rescue Plan Act of 2021, ARPA. Pursuant to the requirements of the ARPA, the grant payment would fund COVID-19 response and recovery efforts and accelerate a Green New Deal for Boston through once-in-a-generation transformative investments that address the systemic health and economic challenges in the areas of affordable housing, economic opportunity and inclusion, behavioral health, climate and mobility, arts and culture, and early childhood. Docket number 0504, message and order authorizing the City of Boston to accept and expend the amount of $40 million in the form of a grant awarded by the United States Department of the Treasury to be administered by the City of Boston's Chief Financial Officer, Collector Treasurer. This grant payment is made from the Coronavirus State and Local Fiscal Recovery Fund, CLFRF, in the Treasury of the United States, established by Section 9901 of the American Rescue Plan Act of 2021, ARPA. Pursuant to the requirements of the ARPA, the grant payment would fund provision of government services to the extent of the reduction in revenue of such state, territory, or tribal government due to the COVID-19 public health emergency, relative to revenues collected in the most recent full fiscal year of the state, territory, or tribal government prior to the emergency.
Thank you, Mr. Clerk. Docket 0503, 0504 will be referred to the Committee on Boston's COVID-19 recovery. Mr. Clerk, please read docket 0505.
Docket number 0505. Message in order for your approval, a home rule petition to the General Court entitled Petition for a Special Law, an act relative to creation of a branch of the Boston Public Library within an affordable housing development at parcel R-1 in the South Cove Urban Renewal Area in the Chinatown section of the City of Boston.
Thank you. Docket 0505 will be referred to the Committee on Government Operations, Reports of Public Officers, and others. Mr. Clerk, please read docket 0506 to 0509, please.
Docket number 0506, notice was received from the City Clerk in accordance with Chapter 6 of the Ordinances of 1979, relative to action taken by the Mayor and papers acted upon by the City Council at its meeting on March 9, 2022. Docket number 0507, notice was received from the City Clerk in accordance with Chapter 6 of the Ordinances of 1979, relative to action taken by the Mayor on papers acted upon by the City Council at its meeting on March 16, 2022. Docket number 0508. Notice was received from the Mayor of the reappointment of Mina Carr as chairperson to the Boston Housing Authority Monitoring Committee for a term expiring February 28, 2024. And docket number 0509. Communication from Shamit Benford, Chief Emergency Management, regarding the Metro Boston Homeland Security Region BHSR contract renewal.
Thank you. Docket 0506 through 0509 will be placed on file. Reports of committee. Mr. Clerk, please read docket 0313.
Docket number 0313, the Committee on the Community Preservation Act to which was referred on March 2nd, 2022, docket number 0313. Message in order for an appropriation amount in the amount of $27,205,854 from fiscal year 2022 Community Preservation Fund revenues for community preservation projects at the recommendation of the City of Boston Community Preservation Committee. Submits a report recommending the order ought to pass.
Thank you. The chair recognizes Council Flaherty, Chair of the Committee on Community Preservation Act. Council Flaherty, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. President. In accordance with General Laws, Chapter 44B, the Community Preservation Committee recommended a total of 52 projects for consideration for the allowable uses of the community housing, open space, and historic preservation. Of the approximately 27 plus million appropriation, 14,660,159 is being recommended for 10 affordable housing projects, $6,141,357 recommended for 25 historic preservation projects, and $6,404,338 recommended for 17 open space and recreation projects. This matter was sponsored by Mayor Michelle Wu, referred to the committee on March the 2nd. As previously discussed at the last council meeting, the committee held a hearing on April 5th, where public comment was taken and members of the administration provided testimony on all 52 projects. With that said, I am happy to report that the 52 recommended projects support and align with the objectives of the CPA and the priorities of this council. And I know that as referenced in the opening prayer, as we're in Holy Week, the prayers of the ministers and pastors in the congregation of a lot of churches were answered by the CPA this week. So congratulations to them and the other recipients of many and much needed causes. And this is also a call to other organizations and groups and churches out there to take a long, hard look at CPA, get the word out there. Also to my district and at-large colleagues, if there are things in your district, if you're driving by something and you think it could be a good fit, that's kind of how this thing works. It's you get introduce folks to CPA and introduce the CPA to the different organizations around the city. And as mentioned through the chair, it's an opportunity to kind of bring people and organizations together. So with that as the chair, I recommend docket 0313 ought to pass. And that will be, the full loaner will be $27,205,854 from fiscal year 2022. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Council Flaherty. Before we take a vote on this, does any council wish to speak? The chair recognizes Council Mejia. Council Mejia, you have the floor.
Thank you, Councilor Flynn, and thank you to the chair. I'm really excited to see all of these investments. The only thing that I just want to point out that in the affordable housing line, most of those projects are just earmarked to Dorchester, Roxbury, and Jamaica Plain, which is great. I'm glad to see more affordable housing, but I think as we continue to move through these conversations in the future, would love to see affordable housing being spread across the entire city so that we're looking at affordability across other spaces and places. So I just want to name that, and something for us to continue to hold ourselves accountable to, that affordability should be across the entire city, not just in concentrated areas. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Council Mejia. The chair recognizes Council Bork. Council Bork, you have the floor.
Thank you so much, Mr. Chair. And just as Vice Chair of the committee, I wanted to add my support to the chair on approving this slate, and also say that I really appreciated how much the administration came to also answer our questions kind of about how CPA is being administered, how we measure questions of equity, geographic distribution, how we make sure that the historic preservation program in particular supports the parts of our community that have amazing historic assets but don't necessarily have a endowment or a board or whatever organized around them. And I just, as somebody who fought for CPA back in 2016, it's just really great to see it sort of coming into that maturity, and also to see the administration recognizing that it's still a work in progress in terms of how we put all those things together. So I know I saw a docket go into Councilor Flaherty's committee today about the administrative budget for the year ahead, and so I think some of the conversations we started there will get to continue, but just really excited about this slate today. So thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Bork. The chair recognizes Councilor Baker. Councilor Baker, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. President. I just have a quick question through the chair to the other chair over here, I guess. Does the $27 million, does that deplete what we have in CPA now, or do we start at a zero balance for 23?
Council Flaherty, you have the floor.
Chair, and I'll refer that one obviously to Councilor Bach, because I think that they hold back, but then it's going to continue. It's a revolving, I guess. It'd probably be the
Yeah, so
appropriate
not
word.
necessarily depleted, there's probably some, similar to what we do with the workforce.
There's a statutory holdback, but through the chair to Councilor Bach.
Council Block, you have the floor.
Yeah, I would just say, so there is a bit of a residual, but it's not huge, but then we get a whole bunch more in like July 1st. So the way that the CPA, for anybody watching at home, if you are thinking about applying for a CPA project, it's a rolling application process. So you and your group could submit an application today. If you go on the CPA website, there's actually a whole bunch of info sessions coming up in April and May. And I think the deadline for actually filing is all the way in August. And then through the fall, they work with projects around like viability and making, qualifying for CPA. And then it's really the winter where we get this slate of projects and then end up voting in the spring. So it's kind of a year-long process.
Thank you.
Thank you, Council Block. Thank you, Council Baker. The chair recognizes Councilor Jen. Councilor Jen, you have the floor.
Thank you, and I want to echo something Councilor Bach said. The administration really did a great job with their presentation in terms of allocation of CPA funding. I also just want to echo something Councilor Flaherty said. When we're out and about looking at, what could need upgrades, I want us to pay particular attention to our immigrant communities. When we look at the distribution of who received these funds, I don't see a lot of representation from immigrant congregations, from folks who may not have access to City Hall in ways that others do. So just a plug for us to be a lot more intentional about reaching out to communities that may not know about CPA or may not have access to folks who know about CPA.
Thank you, Councilor Jen. The chair recognizes Councilor Fernandez-Anderson. Councilor Fernandez-Anderson, you have the floor.
I guess just piggybacking off of my colleague, Sister Blue Jen, I think that they did an amazing work presenting. Thank you to the chair and Councilor Bach's presentation and questions as well. Engagement. It really, I learned a lot from the presentation. I think piggybacking off of Councilor Louise Jen, it's just really eye-opening to see that access is everything. So everything that is getting preserved or rehabilitated, and we'll probably see that in the budget as well, is about people who have access, people who are directly connected, people who know counselors, people who are politically connected as well. So if we continue that way in this city, that we continue to rehabilitate and fix and put capital funds or preservation funds into projects that stakeholders or activists or people are of affluent communities, even with the budget, the participatory budget process with the community, we noticed that it was about 70% white and affluent communities, therefore empowerment, therefore knowledge and navigating of resources. So if we continue in this way, I would like to set precedent to at least to be, if this is an educational moment, an aha moment, whatever, like let's get to the point where we actually put our money where our mouth is and actually start changing this thing. Because I heard one comment in there that was very offensive, extremely offensive. And to this, even today, I'm still emotional about it. And I'm not going to call out names or anything like that, but it was about, and it was a public thing, I guess I can talk about it. It was about Roxbury, Dorchester, Mattapan not wanting or not caring about fancy stuff. And so what the hell does that mean? We do care, we do want that stuff. The thing is that we're so poor, we want to eat. We're just so busy, we're just so poor that we are so busy to just advocate on getting housing and food. So of course our first focus is not beautifying and fancy stuff. So just to go back, and I don't want to get sidetracked here, but I want to open up and encourage everyone in moving forward with any types of programs or any types of funds or any type of capital, that we really open up our minds to look at how we're redistributing funds and how are people connected and how people get money, because it really seems lopsided, and it really, as I said, it really seems like it goes to affluent communities because they are more connected and know how to advocate and understand how to reach this money.
Thank you, Councilor Fernandez-Anderson. Anyone else like to speak on this? The chair recognizes Councilor Braden. Councilor Braden, You have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. President. I also want to, this is a great program. We're still ironing out some of the kinks. It's fairly new. It's putting a huge amount of money into projects that wouldn't necessarily be funded otherwise. I do share my colleagues' concern about the geographic spread of the allocation across the city. But part of that is, I know from my experience in Alston Brighton, that I have a list of the back of my paper here of things that possibly would be eligible for some CPA money, but very often it is, you need community groups, you need people who are volunteers, your historic society or your neighbourhood groups to really dig in and do the work to prepare these presentations. So I hope that we can ensure that community groups all across the city or neighbourhoods that need support, technical support and guidance. I know that the CPA has that technical support and guidance to help, but that people will be emboldened to sort of think about their neighbourhood and ask for help to prepare a presentation for CPA funds going forward. So it's a great program. I hope that we can expand the reach and the distribution of funds going forward. And thank you for all the work that's been done so far. It's an incredible group of folks that review all the applications and present the ones for our approval. So thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Councillor Braden. I would like to add that, I just want to say thank you to Councillor Flaherty, Councillor Bach, and our former Councillor Campbell. Those three were really instrumental in bringing CPA to Boston. So I want to recognize Councillor Bach, Councillor Flaherty, and former Councillor Campbell bringing this to the city. It's an incredible program, as everybody mentioned. Just as a follow-up to Councillor Braden's comment, in my district, I host a session with each neighborhood in my district on CPA itself, just trying to encourage neighborhood associations to attend and to complete the application. So there's an important role for us to play as well. And the CPA staff will attend a meeting if we do ask them to attend. So let's all try to work together in bringing this program throughout the entire city. But let's also use our district city councilors as well, because they have great contacts with neighborhood associations, community leaders, and the CPA will gladly assist us in some of these outreach information sessions. So just wanted to mention that in case it's helpful. Anybody else like to speak on this matter? So thank you, Councillor Flaherty, the chair of the Committee on Community Preservation Acts. Councillor Flaherty seeks acceptance of the committee report, passage of docket 0313. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed say nay. The ayes have it. The docket is passed. At this time, the chair recognizes Councillor Lara. Councillor Lara, I apologize for not calling on you.
No, thank you so much, President Flynn, and I don't think that this will impact the vote at all. I unfortunately missed this hearing, and so I wasn't there for the process, but because I missed the hearing, I set up a one-on-one meeting with Thadeen to ask these questions ultimately. And so our office is hoping to look over the eligibility and create a list of eligible organizations and schools that didn't have access to these resources so that we can send a written letter to those offices. I wanted to offer that to my colleagues because it's just, it was evident to me as well as it became evident to everybody else that having access and knowing about the fund was a barrier to it. And so obviously that's going to take some time to comb through the entire district and see like organizations or schools that are eligible. But our hope is that by sending kind of like a mail-in letter and maybe doing some phone banking to like make calls to people to just let them know and having some of the community meetings that you've just mentioned, that it would increase access and just knowledge around the CPA program. I know that there's still going to be barriers because it is a grant. And although you don't have to be a grant writer to write it, you still have to have like some sort of knowledge, Councilor Breeden said, to put it together. But I think that letting people know about it is a good first step, so we can actually ultimately see what the need is for more technical assistance, and make sure that they, Dean, and the CPA office has all of the resources that they need to run the program effectively.
Thank you, Councilor Lara. One final comment, Councilor Mejia?
Yes, I am here for all of that, Councilor Lara. And, you know, I'm in my, 28th month here on the council, and the more that I am in this building, the more I realize the accessibility and who has it and who doesn't. So I really do think as we continue to move forward, all of these conversations are going to need to be led through an equity lens, as my colleague Fernandez Anderson says all the time. And I think that while I am voting yes and moving this along this time, I do believe that we need to hold ourselves up to a higher standard when it comes to city resources, because the haves and the have-nots continue to persist. And I think there's 13 members of this body, and we all have a responsibility in making sure that we're serving all of our constituents. And right now, this as written and as doled out does not really truly reflect equity. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Mejia. Matters recently heard for possible action. Mr. Clerk, please read docket 0199.
Docket number 0199, order for a hearing on state receivership for Boston Public Schools.
Thank you. The chair recognizes Councilor Mejia, the chair of the Committee on Education. Councilor Mejia, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. President. On Monday, the Committee on Education held a hearing on docket 0199, an order for a hearing on the state receivership for Boston Public Schools. We were joined by my colleagues, Councilor Flynn, Murphy, Lara, Worrell, Louis-Jean, and Breeden. From the administration, we were joined by BPS Deputy Superintendent of Academics, Drew Elschlin, and BPS Deputy Chief Academic Officer, Farah Azarija, and BPS Senior Director of Data and Accountability, Monica Hogan. On the advocate side, we were joined by Domingo Morel, Professor at Rutgers Newark, Hareen Harshanal, former DESE board member and BPS parent, Suhey Scalo, a parent at the Hurley School, and Ruby Reyes, Executive Director of the Boston Education Alliance. The hearing itself was brought about as a result of recent events where members of the Board of Elementary and Secondary Education have begun to bring receivership up as a possibility in BPS's future. It was also brought up based on the desire from counselors to learn more about the receivership process and what it could mean for our school district. During the hearing, we heard from members of the administration, advocates, and members of the public alike that receivership is not a viable option for Boston Public Schools. Hareen, who herself was a DESE board member, admitted that the vote to take Lawrence into receivership was the wrong one, given by DESE's poor track record of improving schools, districts placed under receivership. Several members of the public also came forward to voice their opposition and to any proposed state receivership of BPS. Given the overwhelming opposition, it seems crucial that we as elected officials listen to the voices of the people and take a stance on receivership, especially as we undergo a superintendent change. I look forward to taking further action on this issue, but for the time being, we're going to keep this docket in committee. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Mejia. Would any other councilors like to speak on this matter? The chair recognizes Councilor Baker. Councilor Baker, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. President. I was unable to make the hearing on Monday, and I'm torn with receivership. I don't think the busing contract works. We spend $150 million a year. That contract could be cut up into $150 million contracts and spread around the city. I'm concerned about Madison Park. I think Madison Park should be a regional school where they can control their own destiny, because vocational education, I believe, is different from your regular gen ed. I lived through the DEVA when the DEVA went into turnaround status, and when they had the supports there, they really thrived. But then the state took it all from them after 5 years when it wasn't really enough time for them to do what they were trying to do. So again, I labor over the fact that we're spending all this money every year and it's not going to get any better. It's going to be $40–50 million every single year, $25,000 per student each year. I mean, I think as a parent, I would rather that as a voucher so I could send my kids someplace. But those are just some of my thoughts. I am concerned about receivership, but are we going to continue down this path of, I believe, not really giving our kids, the kids in the city of Boston, the best of what they deserve? I believe we're failing them. The schools are unsafe. The schools are having difficult times. And maybe in a year and a half, they'll become more safe as we get further away from the COVID and all of the mental health issues that every family in the city is going through. So just some thoughts on that, Mr. President, that I was unable to voice during the Monday hearing. So thank you for allowing me.
Thank you, Councilor Baker. The chair recognizes Councilor Flaherty. Councilor Flaherty, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. President. Just have the record reflect that I was present at the hearing. Thank you.
Mr. Clerk, please reflect the record that Councilor Flaherty was present. The chair recognizes Councilor Lara. Councilor Lara, you have the floor.
Thank you, President Flynn. I just want to make a comment, particularly around what happened at the hearing. I think it was made very obvious to myself and my colleagues that DESE has shown an abysmal track record in the districts that it's already taken over, all of which are smaller than BPS and currently still underperforming. In fact, BPS is currently overperforming every single one of the districts that are that are under DESE receivership. I share concerns around the timing of the review. We have an outgoing superintendent, we have a new mayor, we're changing to a more democratic process, and also the review is happening a year earlier than the MOU stated, than the MOU between BPS and DESE indicated. And we didn't receive any updates from DESE about how they were upholding the agreements in the MOU, their end of the agreements on the MOU. And during the hearing, it was really made clear that receivership has been ineffective, at least here. It's a racist policy, it's undemocratic, and I don't think that that's an option for BPS, and frankly, I don't think it should be an option for anyone. Boston is generally moving towards a more democratically run school system, and I think that we should continue in that direction. I think all of my council colleagues, like Councilor Baker, share concern over BPS. I think that we have questions about what we're doing, how we're doing it, how we can be more effective, how we can better serve our students, and the answer to all of those questions, I don't think that the answer to any of those questions is state receivership. And so I'm grateful for Chair Mejia for holding that hearing, but I think that we need to make a commitment, a collective commitment as a city council to fight the possibility of this happening to our schools. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Lara. I wanted to weigh in, I'm also against the receivership of the Boston Public Schools for many of the reasons Councilor Lara mentioned. I don't want to see a state official coming to Boston that has very limited knowledge about our school system and neighborhoods running a major system. I'm confident that we have people here in Boston that are able to do it. We have a mayor that just started 5 or 6 months ago, and I think it's important to give the mayor an opportunity and the new superintendent, whoever that might be, an opportunity to make changes, make structural changes, improvements to BPS, but I think we also have to acknowledge that BPS is a struggling system. But it takes all of us to work together with the mayor, with the BPS team and our BPS families to make drastic improvements that are desperately needed. Docket. The chair recognizes Councilor Mejia for a brief minute.
Yes, thank you, and sorry, Councilor Flynn, but I just want to thank Councilor Lara for her leadership and for your support and for speaking up. And I also want to acknowledge Councilor Baker and his concerns, because I think they are real. I think we have an opportunity during this budget cycle to really hold ourselves accountable when BPS comes with their PowerPoint presentations, right? is dollar for dollar, what's our return on investment, right? And I think that this level of accountability is what we are going to be put to task for, and I'm looking forward to that conversation because what I have seen is that we have just started to implement more guidance counselors in our schools. A lot of the things that we've been fighting for have just been implemented this year. So we need time to see how the return on those investments are looking before we give DESE. And I actually was in Holyoke fighting against the state receivership then in 2015, and I saw the debacle that had on the community, and also that's one of the lowest performing schools, and even though it's still under state receivership. So I think that we have an opportunity to stand together as a council and push back. So thank you to my colleagues. Thank you to Councilor Baker for raising those concerns, and we need to continue to hold ourselves and the administration and BPS accountable to ensuring that our return on investment looks the way we are hoping our intentions are. So thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Mejia. The chair recognizes Councilor Lujan. Councilor Lujan, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. President. I just wanted to respond to one thing that Councilor Baker mentioned, and one thing I think that was teased out pretty well at the hearing. We always like to compare ourselves to our suburban counterparts, which for a number of reasons I don't think is fair because of the structural differences in our schools and a number of, legacy practices that don't apply here in the city of Boston. But I will say that the solution, when we talk about we're spending too much money, what was mentioned in the hearing is that we're actually not spending enough. If you actually do want to do that comparison to suburban counterparts who are spending $30,000, $40,000 per pupil, per student. So I think, especially as this budget conversation is coming about, in terms of how we're spending per pupil, and if we do actually want to bring in other suburbs and the things that they have and what we don't have, the answer is to more investment and deeper investment into our public schools as a public resource, rather than thinking about taking it away. I will also say that obviously BPS has a lot of problems, but one of the BPS's biggest problems, I think, is they don't communicate the good things that are being done in our schools. There's a lot of great things being done. We're actually competing in a lot of areas with charter schools, and I think it's important for us to really elevate that and to talk about what our schools need are more resources, and I think that was something that was really brought out really well in the hearing, that if we are serious about this, it's not about taking away from the schools, it's about what we're adding to them.
Thank you, Councilor Mejia. Thank you, Councilor Lujan. Any other final question, final thoughts? Docket 0199 will remain in committee. Mr. Clerk, please read docket 0187, please.
Docket number 0187, petition for a special law, an act relative to reorganization of the Boston School Committee.
Thank you, Mr. Clerk. The chair recognizes Councilor Arroyo, Chair of the Committee on Government Operations. Councilor Arroyo, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The Committee on Government Operations held a hearing on Monday, April 11th on docket number 0187, petition for a special law regarding an act relative to reorganization of the Boston School Committee, which was sponsored by myself and Councilor Julia Mejia. I'd like to thank my council colleagues for attending, Councilor Braden, Councilor Louis Jen, Councilor Flynn, Councilor Murphy, Councilor Flaherty, and Councilor Worrell. This home rule petition would establish a transition from a fully appointed school committee to a fully elected school committee in the city of Boston as it's currently written. The legislation takes a phased-in approach to that transition, doing it over time so that all the elections are not at the same, all those seats are not filled by election at the same time. In the future, they would be on the ballot at the same time, but it phases in that approach. This hearing was an opportunity for councilors to refresh their memories of the hearing held last year and for new councilors to hear from residents and advocates and share their thoughts. At the hearing, the committee heard from parents, teachers, and students at Boston Public Schools who voiced their concerns about the current state of the appointed school committee. The committee also heard from several advocates who outlined the history of Boston's decision to establish an appointed school committee, highlighting the deep inequities this created. There was also a conversation about national models of school committees where they've been either hybrid or appointed and or elected. There was further discussion on the proposed phase-in approach and process, as well as how this would play out with the current superintendent search and potential state receivership. I considered it a good initial conversation. I'm going to recommend that this docket remain in committee for a series of working sessions, the first of which will be tomorrow, and it'd be great for councilors, if you do attend, to come sort of with your ideas for what this could look like or what it should look like. The goal here is to have multiple working sessions, the first one to sort of collect from councilors what they would like this to look like ideally, and then to work to find a collaborative sort of way to get this done in a way that helps everybody see what they want to see out of this as much as possible. So that's tomorrow, and I look forward to seeing folks there. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Arroyo. Would any other council like to speak on this matter? The chair recognizes Councilor Mejia. Councilor Mejia, you have the floor.
Thank you to my co-sponsor, Councilor Arroyo. I want to thank all the amazing advocates who helped us get here to this historic point. The Yes on 3 Coalition, the Boston Education Equity Coalition, former elected school committee members, students, teachers, and families, and so many others. You all helped to ensure that this hearing was not only productive, but it also centered community expertise. As I said during the hearing, we received a mandate from the people to return to an elected school committee in the city of Boston. And there will be times in the future to discuss specifically how that would work, but this hearing was meant for us to focus on the why, and I think our panelists and members did do that perfectly in terms of identifying what our why is. So I just wanted to thank Councilor Arroyo for his leadership and the entire crew that worked alongside our office hosting a series of community conversations in native languages. It's important for people to understand what's at stake. So our office, alongside Councilor Arroyo and the coalition, hosted a series of community conversations. And thank you to Councilor Louis Jean for co-hosting with us the Haitian Creole. We did one in Spanish only, and we're looking to do one in Chinese, Mandarin in the near future. And the goal really is to help ensure that people understand what's at stake and to inform our thinking. So I just want to say thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Mejia. Would any other councilor like to speak on this matter at this time? Thank you. The one I wanted to highlight that I am in favor of an elected school committee, and I think it's important for residents to have a voice in the future of the Boston schools. I am concerned about the timing of this, and I've mentioned this at the hearing, the working session. So I guess my question maybe to Councilor Arroyo, one of the things I highlighted is what impact this would have on the search for the superintendent of the Boston Public School system. I know we discussed this at length, but are we able to get a sense of what the search committee thinks of this proposal at this time, if it has any effect at all on how we select or who we're selecting as a superintendent? I am curious about that. So if you have any comments, not to put you on the spot, Councilor Arroyo, but just wanted to ask you that question.
Happy to answer that. I have not spoken with the search committee on the superintendent search. I recognize sort of the fact that we are in the beginning of a new mayor's term, even though this process is about 30 years in the works and is something that has happened even or started under the previous administration or maybe 2 administrations ago, depending on how you keep track of it. So I would just say that part of my consideration in the way that the docket was originally written is the fact that this is phased in so that we don't immediately just take everybody who's on the school committee and say, out with all of you, and move forward in that way. It phases in the elected approach so that you're not looking at a fully elected school committee until 2026. And it's working in stages to get to there. So you get some new elected seats every municipal election up until the 2025 municipal election. Obviously, all of these things can be discussed in a working session and sort of ironed out with folks, but the idea here was, how do we do this in a responsible way? Voters haven't voted for a school committee in 30 years, so you have to get the education that that's actually a thing on the ballot. Then you have to have all of these sort of races planned out in terms of making sure that all of the actual infrastructural things are ready to go. And so all of those things I think we should take into account. All of those things I think we should talk about in a working session. To directly answer whether or not I've been told it makes any difference in the current superintendent search, I have not been told that it does, but I also have not spoken to the search committee, so I couldn't speak to that one way or the other.
Thank you, Councilor Arroyo, and thank you for your leadership on this issue. An informative hearing. 0187 will remain in committee. Mr. Clerk, please read docket 0259.
Docket number 0259, an ordinance amending City of Boston Code, Ordinance Chapter 15, Section 10, and establishing the Boston Fair Chance Act.
The chair recognizes Council Arroyo, Chair of the Committee on Government Operations. Council Arroyo, you have the floor.
Thank you. We held a hearing, thank you, Mr. Chair. The Committee on Government Operations held a working session on Tuesday, April 12th on docket 0259, an ordinance amending City of Boston Code, Ordinances Chapter 15, Section 10, and establishing the Boston Fair Chance Act, which was sponsored by Councilor Julia Mejia and myself. I'd like to thank my council colleagues for attending, Councilor Julia Mejia, Councilor Lucy Louis-Jen, Councilor Kendra Lara, Councilor Kenzie Bach, and Councilor Ed Flynn. I'd also like to thank Chief Solis Rivera, Chair McKenna, and the Human Rights Commission, and the advocates for their participation. And Councilor Flaherty, were you? I remember there was one we had a tech. No? Okay. This ordinance would amend existing language in the Boston City Code and establish a Chief Diversity Officer who would provide oversight over the city's non-discrimination, equal opportunity, and affirmative action policies. This ordinance would also require regular updates on progress made regarding diverse hiring and promotions, and require that the Chief Diversity Officer work with offices to make sure that there are fair hiring practices in place for family members of current employees. During the working session, the committee heard language suggestions on sections speaking to collective bargaining agreements, which would not be subject to this ordinance. All collective bargaining agreements supersede this. There was further discussion regarding the duties of the Chief Diversity Officer and the language suggestions on how covered employees would receive a promotion, upgrade, or reclassification. The committee is working to get information on the city's current job posting policies. While we wait to receive those specific language amendments from multiple parties that we discussed at the working session, I'm going to recommend that this remains in committee. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Council Arroyo. The chair recognizes Councilor Mejia. Councilor Mejia, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. President, and thank you to my co-sponsor, Councilor Arroyo, for chairing such a great working session. We received a lot of great feedback from the administration and from our advocates and our colleagues here on the council, and that we feel like we are really moving this work forward and making the ordinance stronger to best fit and serve our city workers. And a special shout out to Councilor Bach for a lot of great ideas that you shared in that space. Really do appreciate you. And one thing that I'll just say is that I also want to uplift a lot of the workers that reached out to our office over the summer, talking about the issues that they were experiencing, and it was because of their courage and their leadership that we are here in this moment addressing this issue. So I just want to uplift the workers who literally came out of the shadows to talk about the discrepancies in promotional practices here in the city of Boston. And I'm hoping that we can move this along quickly so that we can take it up for a vote. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Mejia. Would anyone else like to speak on this matter? Docket 0259 will remain in committee. Mr. Clerk, please read docket 0265, please.
Docket number 0265, an order authorizing the City of Boston to accept and expend a grant funded through the Coronavirus State and Local Fiscal Recovery Fund, CLFRF, in the Treasury of the United States, established by Section 9901 of the American Rescue Plan Act of 2021, ARPA, awarded by the United States Department of the Treasury.
Thank you, Mr. Clerk. The chair recognizes Councilor Bach, Chair of the Committee on Boston COVID-19 Recovery. Councilor Bach, you have the floor.
Thank you so much, Mr. President. Last night we had a great hearing on the potential of utilizing ARPA funds to support the Dorchester Fieldhouse. This was sponsored by Councilor Baker, and I want to thank colleagues for joining, Councilors Murphy, Flaherty, Louis-Jen, Flynn, Worrell, Edwards, and Fernandez-Anderson, and also to Councilor Mejia for sending a letter in support. It was, it's great to have colleagues in these chairs, but it was even better to have the young people here last night, and it was really, I think, inspiring to see what it looks like when young people are involved in a planning process, and then they actually get to talk about it and talk about the way that they have seen their agency reflected. So I think that was a real highlight for us, hearing from the Youth Advisory Board panel, as well as being joined by the Martin Richard, the MR8 Foundation, and the Boys and Girls Club of Dorchester. So we heard extensive presentations from Bob Scannell, Dot Joyce, Kevin Diebler, and then, as I mentioned, the Youth Advisory Board, and also heard from Mr. Bill Richard. a large number of community testifiers. So the Boys and Girls Club of Dorchester, in partnership with the Martin Richard Foundation, is proposing a field house that is designed to be adjacent to the McCormick BCLA merged school. It's on a ground lease from BPS land. One of the subjects of the conversation was about making it deeply accessible to BPS students. So they've been working on an MOA to make sure that both every BPS student there gets access as a member of the club, and also that during the day it could actually be used as an extension of the school facilities. So I think we had a really robust, exciting conversation. And I also just want to, as chair, say that what Councillor Baker was modeling last night is that if councillors have proposals that they want to have considered vis-a-vis the American Rescue Plan funds, sort of in concert with us looking at the proposals that are coming across the transom today from the mayor, that I'd encourage folks to file a docket, and then my intention is to hold hearings on kind of some of the subject matter areas that the mayor's made proposals on, and to co-notice that with dockets from councillors that are related to the subject areas. So I think this has to be, for us to spend these one-time funds in the best possible way, it has to be a collective conversation between the council and the mayor, and I think we had a very good go at that last night. So I really want to thank everybody who testified. We were here until 8 p.m., but it was just about the most cheerful till 8 p.m. hearing I've been a part of. And I think the students were here in the chamber taking photos and investigating the space after 8 p.m. And and I think some of them are probably coming for our seats before too long. With that, Mr. Chairman, because we're continuing to consider the American Rescue Plan funds, I would ask that this docket remain in committee, and also would obviously defer to the sponsor if he wanted to say a few words on the topic.
Thank you, Councilor Bach. The chair recognizes Councilor Baker. Councilor Baker, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. President. My concern with the ARPA money is that we are going to spend it all and not have anything to show for it. I mean, we were in our budget initial discussion today, and basically there was $350 million there that they're looking to just send around third. See you later, gone. I don't know about anybody else, but I haven't been asked my opinion on where I think the money should be spent. This was a way for me to get my opinion on record here, and for a little bit of history on it. Columbia Point was formerly the city dump, and it was a Columbia Point housing project, which was probably the most overlooked, one of the worst in the country, but one of the first also. They sent in the, I believe it was early 50s, they sent 5,000 families over on the peninsula, one way in, one way out, no stores, no amenities, no playgrounds, nothing. The peninsula is a different place now. We have Dorchester Bay City looking to do some building over there that will connect onto UMass. And we have this project right here in a time where we have not just kids, but all of our families are suffering to some degree with what just happened to us in COVID, and just being shut in and trying to figure out how we get on with life and how we heal as a city, as communities. And I believe in my heart that this building here will go a long way at doing that. And $10 million is a lot of money. It's a big ask. I've never asked for $10 million. Someday maybe I'll be asking for $10 million for myself someplace. But 10 million out of 3, it's not from Ways and Means too. 10 million out of the 350 million that's available to us now is 2.8%. 10 million is 2.8% of what's left on the $350 million. And that's not including what's going into what the school has, the BPS budget has. They have another $400, $500 million. This project will provide everything from indoor fields, so when we have 15 feet of snow, we can still play soccer, we can still play baseball, we can still play lacrosse in the middle of the winter. We'll have basketball courts, we will have performance spaces, we will have spaces that will be dedicated to kids with disabilities that may have sensory issues. We'll allow the Challenger Leagues to come in there, and the Challenger Leagues are set up for kids that have disabilities, that are in wheelchairs, so they can experience sport. There'll be a test kitchen in there. Basically, this project, if we do end up coming for a vote, we're kind of figuring out how we end up doing it. The vote isn't for me, it isn't my vote. The vote was for the kids that were here last night, that totally amazed a lot of people that I think were in the audience. And it's this sort of investment in our future, in our kids, that's going to allow them to be successful into the future. We're a different city now than we were in 1980. In 1980, when I was growing up, our fields were all terrible. I mean, the best baseball I played was on a hard parking lot. That it shouldn't be the case anymore. We have technology. We have really, really good building systems where this building will be teaching and training and healing not just kids, but families for generations. And part of the larger picture, this will be infrastructure that will be community infrastructure before we have a whole lot more development over there in the next 10 to 15 years, akin to the seaport. Not necessarily to that scale, but there's going to be a lot of building that happens over there. And one of the criticisms on the seaport is there's no space for families or kids to run, to play, to have community. And this would be in there first. And a $10 million investment from the city of Boston would allow us to really position the large foundations in the city to say, okay, the city's committed. The state will, shouldn't say will, but I feel confident the state's going to come up with a good bit of money also. And the whole peninsula, the whole Columbia Point Peninsula. And when I look at the Columbia Point Peninsula, I do it from standing with the globe in front of me. The globe is now going to be, is the beat. It's going to be 700,000 square feet of lab space, research and development, which is part of, excuse me for going on so long, but I need to get this out, which is part of the whole new industry that's coming to Boston. It's biotech, it's high-tech manufacturing. We don't know the jobs. None of us here know the jobs. You know what plumbers are. We know what carpenters are. We don't know. Well, I don't know. Maybe I'm being making assumptions. But we don't know what the people in those labs are doing. The Globe's going to be training towards those jobs. The project at Dorchester Bay City is going to be connected onto UMass, is going to be training towards those jobs. The whole peninsula is going to avail us the opportunity for kids to be able to, so the peninsula is going to be K0 to 16, training and development of young minds. And this is the first step of it right here. And it's an amazing, amazing building concept. And I think that when it gets built, regardless if the city gives us $10 million or not, this thing's gonna get built. It helps us a lot if the city is committed, but when this thing gets built, we're all gonna be able to look at it and point at it and say, I want one of those in my district, and we're gonna be able to do that. We're gonna be able to take that model and replicate it. Because it's not just like when I was growing up, it was all sports. That was the only outlet you had. We weren't thinking of art, we weren't thinking of singing, we weren't thinking of poetry. It's all different here now. There's so many different ways to form the child. This building is going to form the child, it's going to form the community. And the most important thing that I heard last night was from a young kid that said, we want to add to the good in the world. This is going to add to the good in the world. And that's why it's a formal request for $10 million across the hall to say, look at it. Pay attention to it. This is the way we should be spending our ARPA dollars. And I don't want to poo-poo on any other way that we're spending ARPA dollars. I don't necessarily agree with a lot of it, because I think it's going to feel like a Vegas weekend when we're done, our pockets are empty, we got nothing to show for it, right? I want to be able to point to it. Look at this thing right here, $10 million. We won in Vegas. We hit it craps. I'm bringing 100,000 home, or whatever. You know what I'm saying, making the analogy. I don't want to feel like we went to Vegas and it's all gone. So thank you for allowing me to drown on there a bit, Mr. President.
Thank you, Councilor Baker. The chair recognizes Councilor Fernandez Anderson. Councilor Fernandez Anderson, you have the floor.
If it's okay with you, Council President, it's Councilor Mejia, Councilor Murphy, Councilor Fernandez Anderson, then Councilor Flaherty.
Okay. The chair recognizes Councilor Mejia. Councilor Mejia, you have the floor.
Flynn is tired of me standing up. That's why he's trying to silence me. You know that's not going to happen. So I just quickly wanted to say, and I really do appreciate Councilor Baker's advocacy on behalf of this particular project. I also would be remiss if I didn't mention that there was a little bit of a controversy in regards to this very specific piece of land. The McCormick students, the faculty, and some of the folks really wanted to keep that space green. And there was some tension there, and I think it's important for us as we continue to move forward in this conversation that, you know, in the true spirit of really reflecting community voice, that we honor that and we just uplift it, because that is definitely something that we're setting the precedence here, that community voice is also being overlooked. So I just wanted to name that, and while I appreciate the whole vision of what the city could look like 10 years from now, I also want to be 100% that the city, what it's going to look like 10 years from now, is not going to be a lot of us being able to go to this beautiful community center that we're fighting for, because we're not going to be able to afford to live here in the city. So I think that while it's really beautiful and I'm excited to support this initiative, I think it's also important for me to uplift the fact of the matter is that every day the city changes, and the beautiful things that we're fighting for, most likely most of our people are not going to be able to benefit from. So while I support this project, I want to do so with naming that. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Mejia. The chair recognizes Councilor Murphy. Councilor Murphy, you have the floor.
Thank you. So it was a very inspiring hearing, and I just want to thank my D3 City Councilor Frank Baker for advocating so strongly for this project, but always showing up in the district and advocating for your constituents. So as one of your constituents, I did just want to take this time to say thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Murphy. The chair recognizes Councilor Eugene. Councilor Eugene, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. President. I want to thank Councilor Bach and Councilor Baker for holding this hearing last night. Those students were extremely impressive. I have obviously a bias for some of the students. I'm a McCormick kid myself, and a lot of the McCormick kids were here. I played basketball, track and field at McCormick. Because we didn't have a good track, we didn't have our own track at McCormick, we had to use BC High's track, right, a private school. But we also use the outdoor area for recess. And I think that it's important as we look at this project to also think about the outdoor space and how we can maintain as much outdoor space as possible for the McCormick kids. There's also the issue of McCormick is merging with BCLA. That's going to add a lot more students to the campus, students who should be able to access the outdoors pretty freely. I'm also really encouraged by a memorandum of agreement that will exist between the project and the school, so that we make sure that our students in the area, both from the Dever, the McCormick, McCormick BCLA, are able to access the site in a welcoming and fully accessible way. So I look forward to further discussions about this project, and also to honoring the voices of those who live in Columbia Point. They also presented a letter before the BPDA announcing some of their concerns, which I think that we just need to take into account when we're considering this project. I also think Councilor Baker, because last night one of the things that he mentioned was that this project it could be a really great project in response to the reckoning that we are having and experiencing here in our city and in the country, trying to find spaces where we can find common ground. I think this project, especially with the use of ARPA funds, will really create a precedent. And I think that is a precedent that I'd like to see a lot of our communities, especially communities of color, use in terms of how we're supporting private initiatives. Even though it's a nonprofit, it's not a public initiative. And then, yeah, I think something else that was said was we should be creating beautiful buildings as a city. we can do that. We have the capacity to do that. And I'd like to see us build more beautiful buildings that really honor and affirm the dignity of all of our young ones. We as a city have the capacity and ability to do that with the land that is within our purview. And so I want to see us doing more of that. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Jen. The chair recognizes Councilor Flaherty. Councilor Flaherty, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. President. Just want to go on record in support, strong support of this. And I think it's important to note that both of these organizations have a stellar track record in delivery, real deliverables to children and to families in Dorchester. I had referenced at the hearing, it's a gem of a location. You think about the Columbia Point Housing Project across the street. Depending on who's golfing, it's a 5-iron from the Mary Ellen McCormick, where I was born, the Old Harbor Projects, right? Think about the partnerships with the McCormick and the DEVA, BC High, UMass, all the jobs that are going to be coming online at the Bayside Expo. Don't forget the Geiger Gibson Community Health Center there, and the plan to revitalize the JFK train station. So lots of opportunity down there. If there's ever an organization or a partnership that is going to help close these gaps, we're looking at them. And I think it's also important to note the author or the first speaker did mention that the collective partnerships, both in the private and public sector, that this ask, there are matches that are lined up with that match to put this in a shovel-ready position, which is what clearly we want to make sure that happens. So, I mean, if you can think about what has sort of been in front of me and my team in terms of the future of that peninsula, it's absolutely amazing. And to think about the pipelines that are coming from these schools to those other institutions, to those jobs, particularly in the STEM field, we'll be servicing these kids, and the sort of the first two priorities will be the Harbor Point housing development, and just on the other side of Kosciuszko Circle will be kids from the Mary Ellen McCormick. I mean, sky is the limit. Not hard to get excited about this. So I think this will be, it's a modest request, frankly, particularly given that the matches that are lined up to make this a reality for the folks over there on Mount Vernon Street and for futures to come. You know the track record of these organizations, not fly-by-nights, not Johnny-come-latelys, not mediocre, kicking butt in their respective fields, and it's about children and families, and they will be servicing our most vulnerable residents in the city. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Councilor Flaherty. The chair recognizes Councilor Fernandez-Anderson. Councilor Fernandez-Anderson, you have the floor.
Thank you. Councilor Baker, thank you so much for actually filing this. And before I go into talk about why I support the project, I go back to my point about, you know, it's one thing to actually know that there's a disparity in certain areas, but it's another than to have to get people on technicalities or bureaucratic processes before you can have access. So I've been working in the last, or my office and I, my team and I, have been working the last 3 months in building asset mapping, comparative data across the city, and looking at the deficits. We have a list of those companies and nonprofits and organizations. We know exactly everything that Roxbury needs by now because we've been doing the study for the last 4 months, actually before I even got inaugurated. But then there's the other thing that in 2022, Boston understands deficits and yet only provides to those who have access. That's odd. And so then the question is, it's like you're slapping me twice. You know the problem, you don't fix the problem, but then when you fix the problem, you give the other side double the money of what you could give me or what you end up giving me. So we are going to be looking at those things to see if any of what I'm saying makes sense. But I learned a lot from the presentation yesterday. Oh my God, like you have the resources, or Boys and Girls Club does. I connected to everything there. The 3 girls that were here, they were all West African, right? You pulled on my heartstrings. The Burtons, you had BPD. Like, it was such a thorough and such an influential presentation. How could I not? It was holistic. It was impressive. We want one at every BPS. We want BPS to look like that, right? So I agree with Councilor Lujan. If we are to set, it's just what we're doing. This is a new culture, y'all. We're setting precedents. This is what we're doing. What we can do is actually access money. This is what this government says. We can access money, and if you don't have access, Councilor Lara will help us with technicalities. And if you don't know how to present, Councilor Baker will help with that. And if you see disparity, Councilor Mejia will help you advocate. We have what it takes. We have the money and we have all of that. Yet, I guess I'm just spilling over because I'm looking at all of the projects that's already proposed, and I'm looking at what's happening, and now I'm learning little by little, oh snap, I'm a rookie, I don't know Jack, that's why it's just bypassing me so fast, and meanwhile, people are like suffering. So I support you. It doesn't take away from your project or their project. It doesn't take away. Right is right, wrong is wrong. If it's a good project, let's support it and let's keep it moving. Let's do the same for other communities. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Fernandez Anderson. And before I call Councilor Baker, I just wanted to weigh in. I had the opportunity to attend last night's meeting as well, and just listening to the young children there from the McCormick School talk about how important this facility would be to them. They don't have money. They don't have any influence. A lot of them actually live in public housing developments, but I said that they should have a state-of-the-art facility that's as nice as anyone in the city, or nice as anyone in Lincoln or Wellesley. Those kids certainly deserve it. Councilor Flaherty mentioned that it's walking distance, and as did Councilor Baker, from the Mary Ellen McCormick Public Housing Development, which Councilor Baker represents, but it's probably the most difficult and challenging living environment in the city. So I just want to say thank you to Councilor Baker for advocating hard for your constituents, and I appreciate that type of level of advocacy that you've provided. Most of them are kids of color, kids in public housing developments. A lot of African American kids, Latinx kids, and a large Vietnamese population as well in Dorchester. So just want to recognize the work Councilor Baker did on that. Let me call on Councilor Baker now. Councilor Baker, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. President. I want to make a couple more points, and I apologize. So in 1974, first year of busing on my side of the city, I was bused over to the Deva School. This parking lot looks exactly the same that it did in 1974. So for us to try and hold on to this, I think, is a bit short-sighted. We should be shooting for more. BC High across the street is getting ready to spend $49 million on fields and field houses directly across the street. So that means our kids at the Deva McCormick will be looking out over the fence saying, look at what's going on over there for them. BC High had one benefactor that gave them the $49 million. We're asking for 10 to go towards this. And some things happened in the redesign about the open space, because before the kids were totally involved, it was more like a large one-story kind of took up a lot. Through the student council, they pulled the building in and went vertical with it, so it's on floors, which provides an open lawn on the front on Mount Vernon Street, which would be the only lawn on Mount Vernon Street. There'll be outdoor basketball courts. There'll be a lot of outdoor space here that wasn't there in the original design, and that came from involving the teens. There's 3 housing developments to speak to 10 years down the line. There's 3 housing developments, like you mentioned, within walking distance. The Harbor Point, of course, Mary Ellen McCormick, and Old Colony. Old Colony might be a little more than a walk, but certainly if you have something to walk towards, you just go towards it. And that's, I think, in those 3 developments is almost 2,000 kids under the age of 21. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, and those are units that are going to be deeply affordable for all of our lifetimes in those housing developments. So, in 02125, which is where this sits, which is part of my district, which is where I grew up, has been identified as the most diverse district, the most diverse zip code in the entire country. So that means all people are congregating in 02125, and this is going to be in 02125. But it's not just going to be for 02125. It's going to be for Mattapan if they can get there. It's going to be for South Boston. It's going to be for whoever wants to get there. I envision citywide track meets there, citywide basketball tournaments. So I think I understand the tension, the initial tension that was about saving green space. But I challenge anybody to go look at the green space. Is it green space? Is it green space? Is brown grass green space? Is a cracked parking lot with some paint on it, is that green space? I don't know. I think this is far more important, far more, it will deliver far more in the development of our kids than just open space. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Baker. Docket 0265 will remain in committee. Motions, orders, resolutions. Mr. Clerk, please read 0510.
Docket number 0510, Councilors Flynn and Murphy offer the following. Petition for a special law, an act regarding the disability pension for Kurt Stokinger.
Thank you, Mr. Clerk. The chair now recognizes Councilor Flynn. Councilor Flynn, you have the floor.
Thank you, Councilor Arroyo. Councilor Arroyo, may I add Councilor Flaherty on as an original co-sponsor?
Seeing no objections, Councilor Flaherty is now added as an original co-sponsor.
Thank you, Councilor Arroyo. This is also being filed with Councilor Murphy as well. This is about a Boston police officer named Kurt Stokinger, who grew up in my neighborhood. He entered the police academy in 2006, started in the Boston Police Department in 2007, a dedicated police officer for 19 years. On January 8, 2016, he responded to a call and he was shot. This left Kurt permanently disabled from any further service as a police officer. He is married, he has 2 children. We're 7 and 4 at the time of the tragedy. His wife, who is currently in remission from cancer, has been working full-time as a nurse throughout COVID. I'm going to ask Councilor Murphy if she will continue. I know she has spoken to the family, but through the chair, I'd like to ask Councilor Murphy to continue.
Thank you. Councilor Murphy, you now have the floor.
Thank you. So when I did speak with Kurt, he told me that he worries about how he can continue to care for his family from sunrise to sunset every day. He suffers from anxiety, depression, nightmares, sleep deprivation, and this has completely impacted the quality of his life in a very significant way for himself, his wife, his children, and his extended family. Kurt, even though he is still suffering mentally 6 years later, is willing to come in and testify when we hold our hearing. And I do ask my colleagues to support this request, knowing that we don't take this lightly at all. We have to look at the circumstances, medical records, and the facts of each individual case and make our decision accordingly. But I do ask my colleagues to support this. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Murphy. The chair now recognizes Councilor Flaherty. No comment. Does anyone else want to speak on this matter? Seeing no one, would anyone else like to add their name? Mr. Clerk, please add Councilor Baker, please add Councilor Bach, please add Councilor Braden, please add Councilor Fernandez-Anderson, please add Councilor Lara, please add Councilor Louis Jen, please add Councilor Mejia, please add Councilor Rell, and please add my name as well. Docket number 510 will be assigned to the Committee on Government Operations. Oh, wait. Yep. If we can read, Mr. Clerk, docket, is it 0514? Thank you.
Docket number 0514, Councilor Flynn offered the following: resolution celebrating the 75th anniversary of Paralyzed Veterans of America.
Thank you, Mr. Clerk. The chair now recognizes Councilor Flynn. Councilor Flynn, you have the floor.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Could I add Councilor Murphy as an original co-sponsor as it relates to veterans and military families?
Thank you, Councilor Flynn. Seeing and hearing no objections, Councilor Murphy, you are now added as a co-sponsor.
Thank you. This resolution is in celebration of 75th anniversary of the Paralyzed Veterans of America. It's an organization that has a lot of members here in Greater Boston and across the country as well. This organization represents veterans that have lost a limb and that are unable now to move on their own without the support of a chair. And I've been talking. They've had spinal cord injuries, and they need a chair to function. And I filed this resolution to recognize the paralyzed veterans because they gave a major piece of their body, their life really, in support of our nation, and to recognize that sacrifice, to recognize that service. But I also filed it to recognize that when they came home from service in the military, they've had many challenges, obviously, as someone that's almost completely paralyzed. They need support, they need services. Right now, there's a major debate going across the country of how our airplanes treat anyone that's in a wheelchair as they're traveling on an airplane. And many people that work at an airport, unfortunately, take the wheelchair and just kind of sometimes just throw it in the plane without any regard for that person that has the wheelchair. And damaging a wheelchair is really damaging that person's accessibility. I highlight that issue because it's not an issue that just impacts the paralyzed veterans, but it impacts anyone that's in a wheelchair. So it's really an issue of civil rights and human rights. But I get back to the paralyzed veterans, and they gave a piece of themselves for our country. Their family has also served, has also sacrificed. And during this time, I wanted to just say thank you to this organization, to let them know that there are people that recognize them for their service, but also that this body stands with them in support of all persons with disabilities to make sure that they have the access to services that they need. That's why I think the Americans with Disabilities Act, which is a federal act, I think it's probably the most significant federal legislation that was ever written. But here in Boston, I want to work with my colleagues, and I know you do a tremendous amount of work on assisting persons with disabilities, but this body has always stood for persons with disabilities across the city. So just want to say thank you to my colleagues for joining me in supporting this important resolution. Thank you, Councilor Arroyo.
Thank you, Councilor Flynn. The chair now recognizes the other original co-sponsor, Councilor Erin Murphy.
Thank you. And as the Chair of Veterans, Military Families, and Military Affairs, I'm proud to support this resolution with President Flynn. My father was a proud Navy veteran who served during the Cuban Missile Crisis, and my stepfather, Papa Jack, had an impressive career in the United States Marines. He grew up in a single-family household with very limited resources in Mission Hill and went on to be a pilot for Marine One, which is the U.S. Marine Corps aircraft carrying the President of the United States. He was flying Vice President Johnson on November 22nd, 1963, when President Kennedy was assassinated, and it was on his flight that Johnson was sworn in as our 36th President of the United States of America. I have always respected the sacrifices that our military and their families make, and the Paralyzed Veterans of America is a great organization that advocates and supports our veterans that suffer from spinal cord injuries and diseases such as MS and ALS. And I feel it's very important that we recognize and celebrate their 75th anniversary. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Murphy. The chair now recognizes Councilor Baker.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Council Murphy and you and Council Flynn for your continued support for the disabled community. My oldest brother was blind, and my uncle Donald Vincent Baker, came back from Vietnam in 1968, paralyzed from the neck down, no resources anyplace. The doctors basically told his family, my father and you know, grandmother and everything, that he probably wouldn't make the year. He ended up living till he was 83 and had a great life because he had supports that were his community. The Dorchester community surrounded around him. So thank you for your continued support for the veterans, the disabled community, and Aaron, thank you also, and thank you for telling us about Papa Jack. That's a pretty good story. And please sign my name, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Councilor Baker. Would anyone else like to speak on this? Seeing no one, would anyone else like to add their name? Please add, I believe Councilor Baker asked for his name to be added, but just be sure. Councilor Baker, please add Councilor Bach. Please add Councilor Braden. Please add Councilor Tanya Fernandez-Anderson. Please add Councilor Flaherty. Please add Councilor Lara. Please add Councilor Louis Jen. Please add Councilor Mejia. Please add Councilor Rell, and please add my name. Councilor Flynn and Councilor Murphy seek suspension of the rules and passage of docket 0514. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed say nay. The ayes have it. Docket 0514 has been adopted.
Mr. Clerk, please read docket 0511.
Docket number 0511, Councilors Bach and Baker offer the following. Order for a hearing to utilize federal COVID recovery funds to construct municipal composting infrastructure.
Thank you. The chair recognizes Councilor Bach. Councilor Bach, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. President. And if I could suspend Rule 12 and add Councilor Lara.
Please, Mr. Clerk, please add Councilor Lara as an original co-sponsor.
Great, thank you so much. Really excited to put this before the council today in partnership with Councilors Baker and Lara. I talked today in the budget breakfast about sort of the types of criteria that I think we need to be thinking about when we think about the ARPA funds, right? So is it addressing something urgent? Are we being a part of a systemic solution? And then, you know, are we creating anything permanent? Is this kind of taken on something that the public can manage? Is it a public good that we're investing in? And, you know, does it create and support good jobs? And so really filed this today to put in the hopper alongside other things, a proposal that I think ticks those boxes and should be part of our ARPA conversations. Folks who came to our waste management hearing a few weeks ago will have heard the exciting news that the city is launching a 10,000 person composting pilot citywide. And obviously our ambition is that the city will eventually compost citywide for all in the way that Seattle and a number of other cities do. But the reality is that scaling up to do that is something that is like very costly. It's a long-term investment in sort of growing city services profile, right? And currently our approach to that has been one of contracting, but when you kind of imagine growing that contract to the city scale, it's potentially very expensive over the long term. And the people of Boston are never going to stop generating compost-eligible food waste. So, you know, it's a sort of long-term thing. And I think that Councilor Baker has really led the way, and I'll let him speak about it more, in emphasizing the fact that, you know, if we as a city invested in municipal compost infrastructure, this is something where we could grow good city jobs and be more efficient over the long term than contracting this out. It's an area, I mean, frankly, I think that when you think about waste management and the places where the city could build the infrastructure, in an ideal world, we would then become the hub even for neighboring municipalities. Folks who are too small to plausibly do this themselves would say, oh, but Boston's running that composting infrastructure and could pay in order for us to handle it. So I think kind of we're at this juncture where we know this is a direction we're traveling. It's essential for our climate plans. And the question is, are we going to travel this direction via private contracting and sort of end up stuck there, or are we going to do some upfront investment in infrastructure and kind of pave the way for real good city public jobs that will do this critical thing that our folks want to see done, and that frankly our zero waste plan requires to be done. So excited to talk about this. I know that the department's already started putting out RFPs thinking about this stuff, but it's kind of one of those things where either the one-time money is there or it's not when you talk about facilities. I also want to note, and there's a reference in the hearing order to this, that another thing that came up at the hearing was the creation of a center for hard to recycle materials known as a CHARM. And that would be kind of the other physical infrastructure piece as we talk about the growth of e-waste and a bunch of these other things in the city. People, I'm sure, have heard about the hazardous waste days and the long, long lines, and it's another kind of unsustainable thing that we do. So really excited to put this in conversation with the other filings from the administration on the American Rescue Plan funds. As I mentioned earlier, our plan in the coming months will be to have hearings on their proposals in kind of topic areas, and then also mix in the council proposals. So we'll just encourage other folks to also come with things that you'd like to have discussed, but this is one for me and several colleagues. So thank you to my co-sponsors, and thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Councilor Bach. The chair recognizes Councilor Baker. Councilor Baker, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Councilor Bach, for filing this and allowing me to come alongside with you. Because of my background, I was in the printing department, which we ended up contracting out in 2010. I lost my job, which ended up landing me here. So good, bad, I don't know. But if you equate this with what we spend in tipping costs, which is how they refer to what it costs us to dump our trash and also our recycling over the years, every year that's going to go up by millions of dollars, and there's no way that we will ever be able to control that. We're at the beginning of something that's actually not new. We used to collect compost back, I wouldn't even put a date on it because it was before my time. This is something we can do if we build the infrastructure, and I don't want to make the Vegas analogy again, but we need to be able to build something that we can point to with this money here. Like, we don't want to, in 2 years, say, okay, 800 million gone, what do we have? What did we do? We didn't do anything. So, Kenzie, thank you again for bringing this up. This is a great, great thing, I think, here. And to be talking about building city infrastructure and city jobs, which goes contrary to what the municipal thinking has been the last 20 years. Oh, we got to contract it out. We have to just, get rid of the employees, get rid of the employees. It's more difficult to get a city contract and pay for your family on a city contract than if you have a good city stable job. And if we're in the beginning of this, like Councilor Block said again, we could become the hub for the whole area, taking people's compost and then selling it back to them as good material to plant with. Another printing department fact: we bought a web press that at one point we printed all of it. It was just one job we did on it. We printed all the tickets for the parking tickets for the city of Boston, but also 11 surrounding communities. I see the same sort of thing happening here. We're actually generating, I think we could probably generate money with this. So I'm so excited about this right here, and I'm so excited about people really thinking about composting in a real way, not just, okay, it's in the bucket and it's out there, we don't know what it's about. I mean, this is real here, and I appreciate it because it is real. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Baker. The chair recognizes Councilor Lara. Councilor Lara, you have the floor.
Thank you, President Flynn, and thank you to my co-sponsors. I'm really looking forward to working on this issue together. I don't think anybody on the City Council or watching us from home is unfamiliar with Councilor Baker's impassionate speeches, and I'm very happy to be on the agreeable end of both of them today. I think that the COVID-19 pandemic has offered us a unique opportunity to access capital, and capital funding that's going to be necessary for us to create more locally run infrastructure. For me, the city's composting program is just the beginning of that. I think that if we commit to building more city-run infrastructure, it's going to mean more community control. The program really ultimately will serve and will be owned by the city that's going to be operating it. This is going to make sure that we're putting our tax dollars to good use by putting servicing our constituents over profit making and ensuring that our focus is particularly on meeting the community's needs. I'm sure that the companies that we contract with do good work, but the City Council is responsible for operating in the public interest. Local control is going to mean local presence, it's going to mean local regulations, it's going to mean local jobs. And as the chair of the Environmental Justice, Resiliency, and Parks Committee, I see this locally run infrastructure and utilities as well as one path that's going to get us closer to being a climate resilient city. And so I'm happy to co-sponsor this. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Lara. I would like to add, as we have this discussion, also part of it should also include, I hate to bring this up again, but pest control. It's a major problem in our city and in every neighborhood of Boston. But when we're doing composting, we also have to make sure that we have a public awareness campaign of educating people of exactly what you need to do. Same thing with recycling, same thing with taking out your barrel. It's not as simple as just taking your barrel out to the street. There are certain times you have to do it, certain places where you have to put the barrel, where you have to put the recycling. So public awareness has to be a critical part of it. And I think as we move forward in the budget process, we have to make sure that we have the funding in place for code enforcement, for inspectional services, for public works when they're dealing with these quality of life, nuts and bolts issues. So just want to say thank you to my colleagues, Council Bach, Council Baker, and Council Lara. Would anyone else like to speak on this, or would anyone else like to add their name? Please raise your hand. Mr. Clerk, please add Councilor Braden, Councilor Arroyo, Councilor Flaherty, Councilor Lujan, Councilor Mejia, Councilor Murphy, Councilor Worrell, and the chair. Docket 0511 will be referred to, 0511 will be referred to the Committee on Boston's COVID-19 Recovery. Mr. Clerk, please read docket 0512.
Docket number 0512, Councilors Worrell and Flaherty offer the following. Order for a hearing regarding allocating ARPA funds to a homeownership voucher program.
The chair recognizes Councilor Worrell. Councilor Worrell, you have the floor.
Thank you, President Flynn. Can I suspend Route 12 and add Councilor Bach as a original co-sponsor?
Yes, having heard no objections, please add Councilor Bach as an original co-sponsor. You have the floor, Councilor Worrell.
Thank you, and thank you to my co-sponsors, Councilor Flaherty and Councilor Block. As the African thought leader once said, people are not fighting for ideas, for things in anyone's heads. They are fighting to win material benefits, to live better and in peace, to see their lives go forward, to guarantee the future of their children. We have watched thousands of longtime residents leave Boston because of the rising cost of housing. Our neighbors who have called Boston home for decades cannot afford to purchase a home in their hometown and struggle to keep up with the rising cost of rent. Through the federal Section 8 voucher program, we are able to subsidize rent, and voucher holders are able to use their vouchers to purchase a home. In addition to expanding Section 8 vouchers, we as a city can create our own voucher program. I'm gonna be a little bit creative, and I came up with a name for it, but it's called the Boston Priority Housing Voucher, where we have the flexibility to define who is eligible for the assistance and will be able to create equity applicants like we have done in other programs. This is an opportunity to bring much needed housing assistance to long-term Boston residents who are stuck in the middle. I've come across many of our neighbors who make too much to qualify for housing assistance but do not earn enough to purchase a home. By layering relief, we will provide our neighbors with a clear path to the middle class. As interest rates go up, borrowing requirements will become more strict. To increase a home buyer's buying power, it will take more than just down payment assistance. If we are serious about home ownership, let's put Bostonians in the best positions to purchase and make Boston their permanent home. And to continue on with Councilor Baker's analogy, imagine going to Vegas, rolling the dice, and being able to buy everyone in the city of Boston a home. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Worrell. The chair recognizes Councilor Flaherty. Councilor Flaherty, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. President. That sounds like a chicken in every pot, I guess, right? So, but I would obviously want to thank the lead sponsor for his leadership and partnership. We've been back and forth on this over the last couple of weeks, just trying to pull things together. And I just think it's important to note that our rental and home ownership markets are extremely competitive and are among the most expensive in the United States. And parallel to that is the cost of living in Boston has increased steeply over the last decade. Everybody in this room has heard from a constituent, a friend, a neighbor on this issue, and all of us know long-term residents and families that are being forced out of the city, a city that they know, they love, a neighborhood they love, and grew up with because they can't meet that financial crunch. And so I know it's a serious problem. We're quickly becoming the city of the very rich and the very poor. And interesting to note, at a hearing last night, my team and I heard from a landlord that rents to folks in his neighborhood at well below market rate. And I know he's not alone. It's not an overabundance of it, but there are a lot of small landlords that rent to their neighbors, and that happens across the city. However, these landlords are starting now to express their own distress at rising costs in our city, whether it's property tax, maintenance and repair of those properties. And they're now having to make decisions as to whether they can continue to do that and continue to provide below market rents in light of the increasing cost. And now they're starting to grapple with having to increase those rents so that they don't find themselves going into a hole. This dynamic, it's separate from sort of the focus of this hearing, but I raise it because I think it's important, because we do have the small landlords. If they stop doing that, that's only going to sort of further exacerbate the crunch for affordable rental opportunities that give renters a chance to stay in their communities. And so home ownership is the best way to build equity and generational wealth. In Boston, that goal is becoming further and further out of reach. And I want to note that the One Plus Boston mortgage program, it works, and it's making a difference. Not enough of our lending institutions are participating, and that's a whole other issue that we can address. But I think it's important to note that that program is an incredible program that helps income-eligible first-time buyers gain buying power in the market. And I think that this is sort of what we were getting at, and obviously leaning into this with the lead sponsor, and obviously in Councilor Bach's experience here, providing direct cash ARPA assistance to fund this for income-eligible first-time home buyers, whether that's cash for down payment costs, whether that's cash for to help with the closing cost, that could be cash to bridge a loan. Will make the difference between someone getting in a home and or not getting in a home. And so I think that's sort of the spirit of what we're looking to do here. I look forward to a robust discussion about this. Welcome any additional ideas and feedback, but we talked at length about the Section 8 voucher, and is there another opportunity, is there another voucher out there that can, again, sort of close those gaps when it comes to home ownership, and I think that this may be the answer to that. So look forward to working with the lead sponsor and the co-sponsor and all of my colleagues to try to make this a reality. No different game changer. Nothing will do a better job of creating generational wealth than a person owning their own home. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Councilor Flaherty. The chair recognizes Councilor Bach. Councilor Bach, you have the floor.
Thank you so much, Mr. President. This is another thing that I'm excited to have come to the COVID Recovery Committee and be part of our conversation there, because I think it's exciting that the administration is proposing in their proposal to have the most money going to affordable homeownership that we've ever done in the city. But I think that when I talk to colleagues on the council, and there are so many advocates of homeownership that I'm hesitant to start naming them, but Councilor Lou Jen, Councilor Fernandez Anderson, Councilor Braden, I mean, we talk about these all the time, and I think part of what I've heard coming from Councilor Worrell is whatever we do for affordable homeownership, we've got to make sure that it's actually hitting the right people, like that the programs are actually that the folks who we all talk to, who we know need them, that especially like our first-time home buyers of color, first-generation home buyer, that these are actually the programs that serve that group and fit that middle. And so I think there's been a bunch of interesting suggestions proposed on the affordable homeownership front by councilors. Councilor Worrell's proposal of vouchers is the one that's before us today. I think the idea of really putting those side by side with what the Mayor's Office of Housing is thinking and really drilling down and making sure that homeownership money is well targeted to hit that missing middle and keep folks in the city is a really important role for this council. So looking forward to being able to have this conversation side by side about that funding allocation. So thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Councilor Bach. The chair recognizes Councilor Braden. Councilor Braden, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. President. I want to also thank Councillor Worrell for taking this initiative and bringing this forward. Home ownership, someone mentioned recently, it's the most reliable way to control your rent. Because if you have a 30-year mortgage, you can predict your outgoings on your housing costs for the way out. And it's a way to build generational wealth. And sadly, we are seeing our neighbourhoods being impacted by folks who've grown up in the neighbourhoods, even folks who have had their families have owned a home in the neighbourhoods. The next generation cannot see a future in which they will be homeowners in our city. And many of our immigrant community are leaving the city because their rents are just so out of unaffordable in relation to their earning capacity that they're relocating to other cities and are further out, like Brockton and Framingham, etc. So, and one of the big issues that we're faced with that are potential folks who want to buy a home are competing with investors who come into our neighbourhoods with $1 million in cash and put the money down before the house can even, the two-family home that can even come onto the market. And then they rent out those homes, those two-family and three-family homes, at $1,000 a bedroom. That's generating $5,000 a month from a unit in a two-family home. Working families can't afford that housing. Folks group together, young professionals or students can group together and pay that, but this is a totally unsustainable way to go for our housing going forward. So not only do we need to think about this type of a voucher program to help put homeowners, folks get into the home ownership and have a home to build generational wealth, but I also think we need to really seriously look at the mechanisms to try and disincentivize the speculative investment that is driving families out of our city. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Braden. The chair recognizes Councilor Fernandez-Anderson. Councilor Fernandez-Anderson, you have the floor.
I think this is an amazing idea, right? Especially since I filed something extremely similar to it. So I'm wondering in how we can work together to merge the two so that we can make it work. I think there's room for us to do work together. And so if I file something and this looks super similar, then we should work together. And I'm wondering then if how we create the space to do that. Same points, using alternative ways to create home ownership, especially with low AMIs, qualifying them through different vouchers, assistance programs, same point. So I just think that great minds think alike. I appreciate you, Brian, and I respect you. I think we have, we want to fight on the same side, and I want to work with you and see how we can merge the two ideas. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Fernandez-Anderson. Would anyone else like to speak on this matter or add their name? If you please raise your hand. Mr. Clerk, please add Councilor Arroyo, Councilor Baker, Councilor Braden, Councilor Fernandez-Anderson, Councilor Lara, Councilor Eugene, Councilor Mejia, and the chair. Docket 0511 will be referred to the Committee on Boston's COVID-19 Recovery. Mr. Clerk, please read docket 0513.
Docket number 0513, Councilors Mejia and Lara offer the following. Resolution in support of the Out-of-Hospital Birth Access and SAFE Act, House 2341 and Senate 1519, and recognizing Black Maternal Health Week in the city of Boston.
Thank you, Mr. Clerk. The chair recognizes Councilor Mejia. Councilor Mejia, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. President. And before I go on, I'd like to add Councilor Arroyo as an original co-sponsor.
Mr. Clerk, please add Councilor Arroyo as an original co-sponsor. You have the floor, Councilor Mejia.
Thank you, Mr. President. You know, when I gave birth to Annalise, I was considered a late age mom. I was, 40. And I had gestational diabetes and a high-risk pregnancy that ended in a C-section. And navigating the system was a bit traumatic, considering all of the complications that I faced, but what I did not know was my rights and what I should be asking for and advocating on behalf of. And, this conversation in terms of Black maternal health is an issue of equity, and I think we have an opportunity here in the city of Boston to really lean into the conversation and help support the advocacy on behalf of this issue. We know that home births here in the city of Boston, not in the city of Boston, but just in general over the past years, have risen dramatically. The new Center for Disease Control and Prevention reports showing that between 2019 and 2020, home birth rates rose 47% in Massachusetts alone. Out-of-birth births, either at home or in birth centers, are safe and beneficial and a valid reproductive choice that is currently denied to most birthing people here in Massachusetts because of certified professional midwives who attend low-risk births in homes and birth centers are not licensed in Massachusetts, despite being licensed in 37 states. And so had I had the option to have a home birth, probably my situation would have looked very different. Fortunately, there's legislation in the State House titled the Out-of-Birth Hospital Birth Access and Safety Act has been filed, which seeks to establish within the Department of Public Health a licensing process for professional midwives and add them as medical/mass health providers. Passing this legislation is crucial for supporting birthing people, closing the crucial safety gaps and expanding access to out-of-hospital birthing options, meeting people where they are and accommodating the needs of birthing persons to ensure that they feel comfortable, safe, and well taken care of. It is crucial that we're making space for people with different preferences when it comes to birthing, and this legislation seeks to address just that. It also is very timely that this legislation is in the State House and we're currently celebrating Black Maternal Health Week. In a time when historic and systemic inequities have resulted in the risk of death and severe mobility being 2 times as likely for Black birthing women compared to white counterparts. And we need to be doing more to support this legislation to recognize Black Maternal Health Month. And I think it's all 365 days a year, especially as home birth rates have risen here by 36% among Black birthing people in the United States between 2019 and 2020. And for all those reasons, I'm excited to support this initiative. And also just want to shout out Nashira Brazil, who is leading now here in the city of Boston to have a birthing center right here in Boston. And I also want to give a shout out to Nurse Tiffany Vassell, who is in the labor and delivery, as well as Emily Anesta for all the work that they have been doing in this space. So just wanted to thank you both for your leadership, and also to my co-sponsors for joining me on this. So I ask that we suspend the rules and pass this resolution, and I hope that my colleagues who have co-sponsored will rise up to the occasion to say a few words too. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Mejia. The chair recognizes Councilor Lara. Councilor Lara, you have the floor.
Thank you, President Flynn, and thank you, Councilor Mejia, for including me as your co-sponsor on this resolution. I am very happy to hear Nashira Baril's name invoked in the City Hall chambers as Nishira was my boss at the Boston Public Health Commission when I worked there, and she taught me pretty much everything I know about home birthing. And I think that the city of Boston is incredibly lucky to have her working to open the first freestanding birth center in the city, and ran by a Black woman nonetheless. I'm excited that the Boston City Council has an opportunity to publicly support the Out-of-Hospital Birth Access and Safety Act and to recognize Black Maternal Health Week. This is an issue that's very near and dear to my heart as a mother. When it came time to make a decision about my birthing plan, I was bombarded with research and data that made it very clear to me that the decision to have a child, especially as a Black woman, was a dangerous one. The United States has the worst maternal health mortality among all wealthy nations in the world. And it's the only nation where the maternal mortality rate has been rising every year. In Massachusetts, like Councilor Mejia mentioned, Black birthing people are 2 times more likely to die or have a near miss than their white counterparts due to structural or interpersonal racism. And I know that it's kind of daunting to listen to that data and to listen to those facts, but there's a bright spot. And that bright spot is that most maternal health deaths are preventable, which means that we can do something about this crisis. When I decided to have a home birth and to give birth at home, I did it because I knew it would be the safest, most affordable option for me. My midwives and my doula were essential in ensuring that I had a joyous birthing experience. And our current laws in the state of Massachusetts make it so that experience is not accessible to everyone. I believe that all people deserve to have a birthing experience where they feel listened to, affirmed, and cared for. And we should work to make that possible, regardless of whether people are giving birth at home, at a birthing center, or at a hospital. And working towards this licensing will make that possible. By supporting this resolution, we're acknowledging that the importance of safer, more equitable access to midwifery care options and the impact that offering those supports will ultimately have on the maternal health outcomes of Black women and all birthing people in the city of Boston and across the state. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Lara. The chair recognizes Councilor Arroyo. Councilor Arroyo, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you to Councilor Mejia and Councilor Lara for sponsoring this and bringing this forward, and for all of the advocates who have been doing work on this. When I did the Racism as a Public Health Crisis, I dug into a lot of different health metrics and things that impact health, and one of the most striking, disappointing, and painful ones was the inequities that we see in Black maternal health. Even in Boston, where our hospitals are considered world-renowned, we have these wide gaps and inequities and these unnecessary deaths. And frankly, it's painful to know that our children and their parents are experiencing outcomes largely due to the fact that they are Black. And so we need to get to a place where we prioritize this, where we speak on this, and we move on this in a way that effectively addresses a very real issue. I hope to see real action on this because these numbers are scary. They are very disappointing, and we are in the year 2022, and this needs to be more of a focal issue. So thank you to those who have raised it, and thank you to those who continue to advocate for these kinds of protections. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Councilor Arroyo. Would anyone else like to speak on this matter? The chair recognizes Councilor Lujan. Councilor Lujan, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. President. I just rise in support of this resolution. I just want to reiterate that the numbers are scary, that Black women are dying at rates that should make us really jolt. And the number of stories from people in my own family, the number of time that I have had to exercise, my strength as a lawyer to make sure that hospitals aren't discriminating against not only Black women in the maternal health space, but in hospitals in general. So we have deep, deep health disparities that we need to address, and there's so much work being done at the city level, at the state level, great advocates, which is why it's really important to have Black women in spaces and legislative bodies really pushing for Black women in our health. So just want to rise in support of this and rise in recognition of Black Maternal Health Week. So thank you to the sponsors.
Thank you, Councilor Lujan. Anyone else like to speak on this matter? The first hearing I had as a city councilor 4 years ago, I sponsored a hearing with Mayor Janey, Councilor Janey, and we had this discussion on the health care of African-American women. And as we recognize Black Maternal Month this month, I just want to say thank you to the sponsors and the tremendous work that you're doing on this subject, and to our city officials as well for the focus that they're doing as well. But this is an important issue, and we need to work together to make sure that the health care and services are available to everybody equally, especially women in need, women of color as well. So thank you to the sponsors. If anyone else would like to sponsor this, raise your hand, please. Please add Councilor Baker, Councilor Bach, Councilor Braden, Councilor Fernandez-Anderson, Councilor Flaherty, Councilor Jen, Councilor Murphy, Councilor Royal. Please add the chair. Docket 0511 will be referred to the committee in Boston's, I'm sorry, yeah. Docket 0513, Councilors Mejia, Lara, and Arroyo. They seek suspension of the rules and adoption of 0513. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed say nay. The ayes have it. The resolution has been passed. Mr. Clerk, please read docket 0514. Oh, we did that one. Mr. Clerk, please read docket 0515.
Docket number 0515. Councilor Lara offered the following: resolution in support of House 225, an act regarding the use of aversive therapy.
The chair recognizes Councilor Lara. Councilor Lara, you have the floor.
Thank you, President Flynn. I am very much wearing my mama hat today on the City Council floor. I want to start my remarks by quoting an article that was written by NBC News and highlighting the experience of a former student at the Judge Rodenberg Center. Quote, Rigo Torres was just 8 the first time school staffers strapped electrodes to his legs and shocked him. They draped a 12-volt battery over his shoulders in a backpack, while a nearby teacher held a clear plastic box with a photo of his face attached. When Torres misbehaved, the teacher would reach inside the box and push a button that sent a 2-second jolt of electricity coursing through his body. Under his treatment plan, Torres could be shocked for threatening to hit another student, running away, swearing or screaming, refusing to follow directions, or, quote, inappropriate urination. One employee, he said, used to shock him in his sleep. Because I didn't wake up, she shocked me, recalled Torres, now 24. Then I ended up peeing the bed, so she shocked me again. The electrodes stayed on his skin for 24 hours a day for most of a decade until he turned 18. This device is called a graduated electronic decelerator and is a part of his treatment at the Judge Rodenberg Educational Center in Canton, Massachusetts. The Judge Rodenberg Center is believed to be the only place in the world where GEDs or graduated electronic decelerators are used. And to give you a point of reference, aversive therapy is illegal for abled neurotypical children and adults. It's illegal for pets and zoo animals. However, it is legal for children and adults who have intellectual disabilities, developmental disabilities, and are autistic. The UN has called the use of these devices torture. The FDA has moved to ban them nationally for the threat that they have posed to public health. 3 students had died at the school between 1985 and 1990, including one who died while restrained. In 2002, resident Andre McCollins was tied to a restraint board for 7 hours and was shocked 31 times after he didn't take his jacket off when told. This is happening in our backyard. The passage of Bill H-225 is going to ensure that no program, agency, or facility that is funded, operated, licensed, or approved by any agency or subdivision of the Commonwealth shall administer or cause to be administered to any person with a physical, intellectual, or developmental disability. Any procedure which causes apparent signs of physical pain, including but not limited to hitting, pinching, and electric shock, to help change the behavior of the person. I just want to make a note that the Judge Rodenberg Center, as of most recent reports, has received almost $2 million in COVID recovery funds from the state of Massachusetts. Today, during Autism Acceptance Month, on behalf of my son and all other children and adults who have intellectual disabilities, developmental disabilities, and are autistic, I respectfully ask to suspend the rules so that we may take a vote on this resolution today, and I ask that my colleagues join me in supporting it. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Lara. Would anyone else like to speak on this matter? Would anyone like to add their name? Please raise your hand. Mr. Clerk, please add Councilor Arroyo, Councilor Baker, Councilor Bach, Councilor Braden, Councilor Fernandez-Anderson, Councilor Flaherty, Councilor Jen, Councilor Mejia, Councilor Murphy, Councilor Worrell. Please add the chair. Councilor Lara is seeking suspension of the rules, adoption of docket 0515. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed say nay. The ayes have it. The docket has been adopted. Mr. Clerk, please read docket 0516, please.
Docket number 0516, Councilor Flaherty offered the following. Resolution recognizing National Public Safety Telecommunications Week.
The chair recognizes Councilor Flaherty. Councilor Flaherty, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. President. As Chair of Public Safety, I just want to recognize National Public Safety Telecommunication Week. Our Boston Police Department Operations Division serves as the city's public safety answering point and acts as the connection point between emergency services and those in need. In 2021, which is the latest stats that we have, BPD operations fielded a total of 618,925 calls. Let me just get a hold of that. 618,925 911 calls for the city of Boston alone. That's over 51,000 calls a month. Each of those calls represents a resident in need looking to speak to a calm, helpful person, extremely stressful, frightening, or life-threatening or altering situation. The calls range from motor vehicle accidents, medical emergencies, shootings, fires, domestic disturbances, to mental health crisis, and the very rare but the very good ones, birth and deliveries. They deserve much more than a week. So again, a big thank you to our 911 dispatchers for all the work that you do on behalf of our city and its residents. And I'm asking that the rules be suspended, that the council pass this resolution today, and urge my colleagues to sign on. And let's send a big, warm, hearty thank you and an appreciation for the great work that they do. Long hours, stressful conditions and situations, overworked, undermanned, the list is endless. But our 911 operators are truly the unsung heroes when that phone rings. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Councilor Flaherty. Would anyone else like to speak on this matter? The chair recognizes Councilor Mejia. Councilor Mejia, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. President, and thank you to the maker for filing this resolution. I rise to say I'm in support. My cousin was a 911 operator, Brenda Ortiz, for many years, and I got to hear a lot of what that stress level is like. And also one of the parents that was part of a network that I created is currently still working there. And I actually have heard from so many folks about the level of stress. And the best way for us to honor them, in addition to filing this resolution, is to making sure that we are supporting their mental and social and emotional well-being by making sure that we are also, when it comes to budget season, really uplifting the amount of support that they need in staffing and also supporting their mental and social and emotional well-being. So I just rise to say thank you to Councilor Flaherty for uplifting this, but I think I just want to add that in order for us to really understand the magnitude of the trauma that a lot of our operators are under is crazy. Like, you get a call and you have to facilitate, and rise to the occasion. And sometimes you go home and you're triggered and you're carrying that with you. So I think there's a lot of work that we could be doing in that space, Councilor Flaherty, and I look forward to, aside from this resolution, figuring out how we can support a lot of our workers and their social and emotional well-being. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Councilor Mejia. Would anyone else like to speak on this matter? The chair recognizes Councilor Braden. Councilor Braden, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. President. I want to thank the lead sponsor for this resolution. I think when we think about first responders and emergency services, the first people to respond are the folks who answer that call. And it is, as Councillor Mejia has already mentioned, it's incredibly stressful. And I think we need to sort of look at recognizing the work that these workers are doing as they are first responders. And they may not be getting in an ambulance or a police car and racing to the scene of a crime or an accident, but they are the first responders who very often are helping reassure people in crisis, connect them with emergency services, and really take care of a situation. It takes a lot of presence of mind and professionalism and groundedness to be able to do that in a calm and efficient way. So I would ask us to consider not just looking at these workers as sort of administrative staff, but also really start to think about them as very much part of our first responder infrastructure. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Braden. And I would just like to echo what Councilor Mejia mentioned on this subject. Is when we do these resolutions, it's also an important opportunity, or a unique opportunity, for us to advocate for it in the budget process, in the budget season. As we're coming into the budget season, we're learning more from Councilor Flaherty's resolution and from Councilor Braden and Councilor Mejia. But it's also an opportunity for us to acknowledge the tremendous work of these dedicated professionals, but also to advocate for them in the budget process. So just want to say thank you to Councilor Flaherty, Councilor Braden, and Councilor Mejia for those comments. Councilor Flaherty seeks suspension of the rules. Oh, yeah. Would anyone else like to add their name to it? Please raise your hand. Mr. Clerk, please add Councilor Arroyo, Councilor Baker, Councilor Bach, Councilor Braden, Councilor Fernandez-Anderson, Councilor Lara, Councilor Jen, Councilor Mejia, Councilor Murphy. Please add the chair. Councilor Flaherty is seeking suspension of the rules and adoption of docket 0516. All those in favor say aye. All opposed say nay. The ayes have it. The docket has been adopted. Mr. Clerk, please read docket 0517, please.
Docket number 0517, Councilors Louisiana and Flaherty offer the following. Resolution in support of fully funding ABCD Title 10 funding.
The chair recognizes Councilor Jen. Councilor Jen, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. President. I ask to suspend Rule 12 and add my fellow colleague, Councilor Julia Mejia, as a third co-sponsor.
Seeing and hearing no objection, Councilor Mejia is certainly added.
Thank you so much, Mr. President. I'd also like to give a hat tilt also to Councilor Erin Murphy. If I could add a fourth co-sponsor, I would add her. The reason being, as Councilor Flaherty mentioned last week, ABCD lost its Title 10 funding, and I appreciate him for bringing that to all of our attention, especially because all of the at-large city councilors, we sit as board members on ABCD. So this was an issue that really affected us, and we were all really trying to figure out what we could do. As some of you may know, ABCD stands for Action for Boston Community Development. It was established in 1962 by the First Lady of Roxbury, Melania Cass, who was a leader in so many ways in our city in centering the needs of those who are often forgotten, of voting rights, of just a number of issues that were important to Bostonians, particularly low-income Bostonians, regarding, and ABCD works on job training, childcare, heating assistance, you name it. A number of folks, constituents, and family members have relied on ABCD over the years. They've participated in Title 10 program for nearly 50 years, and they use that to really help empower folks and equip them with the tools to overcome poverty through a comprehensive and holistic approach. to a range of health and racial barriers faced by households in poverty. The cultural, linguistic, and economic distinctions in communities and neighborhoods create pockets of extreme poverty exacerbated by decades of neglect, and ABCD works integrally in those spaces to really help empower those communities. And so with 2 days' notice, they lost $2.8 million in grant funding, and it provides substantial resources to all the communities that I already mentioned. So it was a very big hit to its family planning services. So members of the City Council and our representatives who all serve on the ABCD board have been working with our state and federal partners here, the Boston delegation in Congress, to really talk to Secretary Becerra and hopefully reinstitute this $2.8 million in funding, which is so critical to family planning across our city. And so I just thank my co-sponsors here for your work in supporting this resolution, also in our work together on the board of ABCD, either personally or through our representatives. So thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Wooten. The chair recognizes Councilor Flaherty. Councilor Flaherty, you have the floor.
Mr. President, and thank you to Councilor Louisiane for her partnership on this issue. As referenced, it's a fantastic community organization on the front lines for community health services, fuel assistance, job training, placements, food pantries, you name it, ABCD does it. They've been there. Title X funding has been doing and has been partnering with ABCD for 47 years. Not quite sure what happened, not sure how the ball sort of got dropped or there was an oversight here, but it's critical that we get clarification and have this decision be reversed so that the Title X funding be restored to ABCD. And then for our council's colleagues' edification, Councilor Flynn and I were on a call with Congressman Lynch this week, who, with his relationships, was also his phone was burning up on this issue, and I know that he was going to make efforts to connect with the Secretary to try to have this Title X funding restored. So I just want to give him a shout out for his efforts on our behalf as well. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Councilor Flaherty. The chair recognizes Councilor Mejia. Councilor Mejia, you have the floor.
President, and thank you to Councilor Louisiane and Flaherty for having me as a co-sponsor. ABCD for me, has meant the entire world. First, my brother went through Head Start. We got our homes heated through the fuel assistance program, and I ended up getting my first job right out of college through the family planning Title X initiative. And, you know, the woman that hired me is Irving Golson, God rest her soul. Gave me my first job and introduction to family planning, to community engagement, to public health. This was 30-something years ago. So for me to be fighting to ensure that these funds stay with ABCD is personal. And I think we need to do everything in our power to ensure that everything that ABC has done for so many people, that we all rise up and fight to keep this organization alive. And I'm really thinking about Irving right now. I'm really thinking about Irving Golson and how much she's poured into this city around taking care of our bodies, of our health, and this is for her. And we have to fight for her. So thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Mejia. The chair recognizes Councilor Murphy. Councilor Murphy, you have the floor.
Thank you. I'm happy to partner with my at-large councilors. Thank you for including me. ABCD is a $200 million nonprofit organization, and they recently lost their $2.8 million family planning grant, as we already heard. This loss won't shut their doors, but they will have to make some hard decisions and have to lay off as many as 15 counselors. ABCD provides social services for our youngest children in Head Start child care settings, career training, summer jobs, and they also run the William Ostagai High School that services our youth recovering from substance abuse. Clothing, food, housing, and utility bill advocacy for families, and all the way up to our seniors, where they help thousands of Boston seniors promoting health and financial security and offering activities to help combat challenges like hunger and isolation. After struggling through the pandemic these past 2 years, we need these social services now more than ever. In support of fully funding ABCD so there are no interruptions in the services they provide to our Boston residents. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Murphy. The chair recognizes Councilor Lujan. Councilor Lujan?
Yes, I
You
just
have the
wanted to,
floor.
thank you, sorry, I just wanted to add for the record that the majority of Title X funding goes to Mattapan, Roxbury, Dorchester, and so when we're in an era of trying to make sure that these neighborhoods are getting the maximum resources, we shouldn't be taking it away. Just wanted to add that for the record. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Lujan. Would anyone else like to speak on this matter? I want to acknowledge and thank Councilor Flaherty and Councilor Lujan, Councilor Mejia, for their work on this important issue. Councilor Flaherty received a call on his cell phone, I believe, from John Drew, who was the executive director there, talking about how this impact would hurt families in need. So I just want to acknowledge the role the City Council played in advocating for families in need. ABCD plays a critical role in our city. They also supervise and administer the Food Access Program, SNAP, which I think is probably the best federal program there is. But having said that, I just want to thank my colleagues for their important work on this matter. Councilor Lujan, Councilor Flaherty, Councilor Mejia. Would anyone like to add their name? Please raise your hand. Please add Councilor Arroyo, Councilor Baker, Councilor Bach, Councilor Braden, Councilor Fernandez Anderson, Councilor Lara. Please add the chair. Councilors Lujan, Flaherty, Mejia seek suspension of the rules, adoption of docket 0517. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed say nay. The ayes have it. The docket has been adopted. We're on to personnel orders. Mr. Clerk, please read docket 0518.
Docket number 0158. Councilor Flynn for Councilor Mejia.
The chair seeks suspension of the rules, passage of docket 0518. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed say nay. The ayes have it. The docket is passed. Mr. Clerk, please read docket 0519.
Docket number 0519. Councilor Flynn for Councilor Mejia.
The chair seeks suspension of the rules, passage of docket 0519. All those in favor say aye. All opposed say nay. The ayes have it. The docket is passed. Mr. Clerk, please read docket 0520.
Docket number 0520. Councilor Flynn for Councilor Worrell.
The chair seeks suspension of the rules, passage of docket 0520. All those in favor say aye. All those opposed say nay. The ayes have it. The docket is passed. We're on to late files. I am informed by the clerk that there are 3 late files, 2 late file matters, and 1 personnel order. Yeah. 2 personnel orders and 1 resolution. The late file should be on everyone's desk. We will take a vote to add these items into the agenda. All those in favor of adding the late file matter into the agenda say aye. Aye. Thank you. The late file matters have been added to the agenda. Mr. Clerk, please read the first late file matter into the agenda.
First late file matter, personnel order. For Councilor Flynn for Councilor Arroyo.
The chair seeks suspension of the rules, passage of the first late file matter. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed say nay. The ayes have it. The late file matter has passed.
Second late file matter, personnel order. Councilor Flynn for Councilor Arroyo.
The chair seeks suspension of the rules, passage of the second late file matter. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed say nay. The ayes have it. The second late file has passed. Mr. Clerk, the third late file?
Third late file offered by Councilors Worrell and Baker, a resolution to declare April 13th Louis D. Brown Day. Whereas Louis D. Brown was born on April 13th, 1978, and grew to be a 15-year-old sophomore who was an avid reader, motivated to pursue a PhD and one day be the first black president of the United States. And whereas Louis D. Brown's legacy continues to inspire the next generation of peace advocates in the city of Boston and beyond. Now therefore be it resolved that the Boston City Council declares April 13th Louis D. Brown Day.
Thank you, Mr. Clerk. The chair recognizes Councilor Baker. Councilor Baker, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. President. I will speak for Councilor Worrell and myself. Today is actually Brian Worrell's birthday also, so there might be something going on there, I'm not really sure. But we have to recognize Louis D. Brown on today, which would be his 44th birthday. He, for lack of a better term, he gave his life to the city of Boston. In his death, the Peace Institute was birthed. And we all, I think, know the Peace Institute, know Tina, and know the good work that they've done over the years. And through Tina's grief and their family's grief, they've helped thousands of families since then. We actually had them in here today to talk to us about, you know, what they're doing and what the future may look like, and you know, have some ask for us that we'll be putting together in the budget season. But just wanted to make sure that we stood up and didn't let this go by without you know, recognizing it. So thank you, Mr. President, on behalf of myself and Councilor Worrell.
Thank you, Councilor Baker. Would anyone else like to speak on this matter? I know Councilor Baker and Councilor Worrell had the Louis D. Brown staff that were here today and presenting the program to us, and it was exciting learning about it. I knew about their program for many years, including their Mother's Day walk that they have through the streets of Dorchester. But they play a critical role in many families that lost a loved one, working during that difficult period of time, working with the funeral home, working with the police, working with social services. So the Louis D. Brown Institute they do tremendous work in the city. Would anyone like to add their name to the matter? Mr. Clerk, please add Councilor Arroyo, Councilor Bach, Councilor Braden, Councilor Flaherty, Councilor Lara, Councilor Eugene, Councilor Mejia. Councilor Murphy, please add the chair. Councilor Baker and Councilor Worrell are seeking suspension of the rules and adoption of the third late file. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed say nay. The ayes have it. It has been adopted. We're on to green sheets. Anyone wishing to remove a green sheet may do so at this matter. We're on to the consent agenda. I have been informed by the clerk that there are no additions to the consent agenda. The chair moves for adoption of the consent agenda as presented. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Thank you. The consent agenda has been adopted. We're on to announcements. Do any of my colleagues have any announcements at this time? The chair recognizes Councilor Murphy. Councilor Murphy, you have the floor.
Yes, I just wanted to recognize that Boston Police Officer Rob McLean died unexpectedly last week and is being waived tonight at St. Anne's Church. He leaves behind, he's the loving husband of Courtney Whalen, who is the historic preservation consultant in our Community Preservation Act Department, and also leaves behind a young son, Nolan. I want to express my sincere condolences and offer any support the family may need at this time. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Murphy. The chair recognizes Councilor Flaherty. Councilor Flaherty, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. President. In the same line, we were actually at the CPA hearing. Courtney was here offering her time and talents on the historic preservation side. Sat here, obviously, through the hearing, went home, and woke up the next morning. She woke up, her husband unfortunately did not. So we just want to, in the spirit of that, and obviously for Courtney's great work in the CPA space, we want to let her know that we obviously, we had passed today's 52 projects, and we can do so in in that spirit for her. And also wanted to thank my colleagues for their questions about the neighborhood distribution of the CPA. Folks know I take my role as a citywide city councilor very seriously. All 22 wards, all 255 precincts, to borrow a phrase of our colleagues, all means all. I think I've worked very closely with Thaddean on behalf of this body to sort of spread it around the infield. And you know me, Councilor Flynn, no flies on me. If there were, they'd be paying rent, right?
That's right.
As you say.
That's right.
So I've put together copies from 2018 to present of all the funds, the projects that have been funded, particularly for our newest colleagues and their edification as to what has transpired over the last few years, as well as a summary of the 2018-2021 program accomplishments. It also includes a percentage of those that were by neighborhood population, as well as their representation. There's a breakdown. If you're more of a visual learner, there's also a heat map that has been included as part of that presentation from CPA. Thaddean and her team do a great job to the best of their ability. We heard person after person after person, group after group after group testify that they felt that they were the only applicant. That's how special they get treated when they go through the process. I think a big part of it's also our job as district and at-large colleagues to connect folks to those resources. We're out there. We're across, in my instance, I'm across the city. District colleagues and at-large colleagues combined, we can be those, and we can be the ambassadors to the different groups and organizations, and making sure that CPA is doing their part, and the materials being presented, and it's to people where they're at, and in the appropriate and proper languages that are spoken here in Boston. I've also included the total number of applications broken down by neighborhood, CPA category, as well as their status: awarded, unfunded, withdrawn, or ineligible. This information was sent along yesterday in advance of today's vote. As Councilor Bach has referenced, the fiscal year 23 funding round is now open. All of my district and at-large colleagues, you should be getting that information out there. Do a blast, do a mailing, go do an ARC, in whatever way you can get that information to your constituents and to those very important and worthy community organizations and projects is great. And also there's a community preservation virtual community meeting coming up next Wednesday, April 27th at 6 p.m. So same thing, blast that information out, and obviously continue to work with Thaddean and her team. So great opportunity. We obviously can always do better in connecting dots, but I just want to let folks know, as the chair of that committee and as a citywide councilor, I'm sort of dogged at making sure that we're spreading that across the city, and it's demonstrated with these categories and maps that we've broken down by my team. So thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Councilor Flaherty. The chair recognizes Councilor Arroyo. Councilor Arroyo, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. President. I just wanted to take a moment to acknowledge Yasmin Radasi, who's from my office, has been with me pretty much from the start. Was actually hired in March of 2020, and so you know what that month was, and has been with me through all of it. Every policy thing that I've done has only been better because she has helped mold it or shape it. Has been a wonderful person to have in offices and rooms as a representative of me, and what the work and quality of the work that we're trying to do. And you know, I would say in the last 3 years, we've been on a lot of ordinances. We've gotten a lot of things done, and almost none of them would have been what they are now. In fact, I would say none of them would actually have been what they are now without her participation in countless work sessions that I could not attend, countless ones that I could attend, and just shaping and putting that together. And so she is moving on. Friday is technically her last day. She will be joining the Office of Police Accountability and Transparency, and she will be wonderful there. And so I'm excited for her. I'm excited for the city, and that she is still dedicated to public service, and that the last 2 years and everything that's been going on with COVID and all of the different sort of things haven't scared her off. And so I'm glad that she's still going to be participating in that way. It's a major loss for my office, but a major gain for the city as you move up. And so I'm very grateful for her service. And if you see her, wish her well. She has been a service to the city of Boston. So thank you, Yasmin, for everything you do. And Farouk has big shoes to fill as our new policy guy. So thank you for the indulgence, for having a moment to properly send off Yasmin. So thank you, Yasmin.
I'm going to continue going up the row. I might be out of order. but I'm going to call on Councilor Baker next. Councilor Baker, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. President. Just a quick announcement. I told you I was going to announce it last month when we had birthdays. Tomorrow is my 20th anniversary, my wedding anniversary. I've actually been with my wife for 36 years, but 20 officially. So today I love you if you're watching, and thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Baker. The chair recognizes Councilor Bach. Councilor Bach, you have the floor.
Thank you so much, President Flynn. I rise because we've got 3 people who have served the city in senior leadership capacities on cabinet, whose last day is Friday. And so we've got resolutions signed by the whole council for all 3 of them here. And I just wanted to say a quick word about each of them in order of their years of service for the city. So the one I know best is the one who's been here for 5 years, Justin Sterrett, our CFO. We talked about him a little bit this morning at budget. I first met Justin in 2017 when he had just joined the city, and I had also just joined the BHA. And I remember being in the 6th floor conference room, and we were trying to convince the city to get in on BHA capital projects. And I remember it clearly because, you know, we had a really good idea that we were pushing, and Justin listened to it, and like immediately the sort of wheel started spinning. And he basically told us all the ways in which the way we wanted to do this wasn't going to work and was wrong. And then he figured out a way to do it that would work. And so I think the thing that I really want to emphasize about Justin's budget leadership and then overall financial stewardship of the city as he's moved up from budget director to CFO is that when Justin's telling you that you haven't figured out how to do something yet, he's already halfway to thinking about how to get it done. And I think that in Boston, we're at our best when we're like perched right on this line of being very fiscally responsible, because that's really about safeguarding the options of all future generations of Bostonians. And yet at the same time, pushing the envelope for like how progressive a city can we be, how equitable a city can we be, how much investment can we push into various directions. And under Justin's leadership, we've seen the capital budget, and not just the budget, but the effective capital spending grow year after year. We've seen like consistent investments in a whole bunch of departments. I think the council in many ways has gotten used to the idea that like every budget cycle we're sort of retooling several departments to do their work a lot more effectively. That is not necessarily something to take for granted. And I just think that in both these roles of budget director and then taking on this wider fiscal stewardship of the city, it's not just about, you know, you hear a lot about the AAA bond rating, which is super important, and the fact that we're going to have paid down our pension liability. These are like core, super important things. But I think at every department of the city has Justin's fingerprints on it, and that's also true even outside of the city departments, BHA, where I was working. He's really been an architect of getting support for housing into the city capital budget for the first time over his tenure. So I just, as having served in Ways and Means and worked with him on budget stuff, just really want to thank him for all that work and say that we're going to miss him a lot. Secondly, Selena Barrios Milner has served the city for 7 years, doing tons of work in equity, in economic development, and then became the chief of equity under Mayor Janey. I think, you know, some of the greatest accomplishments that she's had in her tenure are actually getting that disparity study that was so long looked for and hoped for across the finish line, not just getting it done, but getting it done well and with community stakeholders, and then being in the position to start implementing a really, you know, more robust and with better teeth BJRP. And I just think that that is work. It's funny how all the stuff that we talk about in these big picture conceptual ways on the council, like they often come down to like really in the trenches, technical, complicated, bureaucratic work, especially something like that where the city was trying to make a real legal room to be more equitable. And I just think that in this work, a lot of times you sort of pass the baton, and we're going to be finding that for many years hence, as we get smarter and more robust on those fronts, we're carrying a baton that Selena really passed to us. And so I'm really grateful for all her work on that. And I canvassed John Barros, who was her boss, about her, and he just a few adjectives said, oh, what an amazing person, passionate, committed, hard worker, such a dedicated public servant. So I want to thank Selena as well. And lastly, with 15 years of the city, 4 different mayors, Chris Osgood is leaving us on Friday. And I think Chris is one of the best public servants in the city. And I think that, you know, people again and again will talk about Chris, just the way, how smart he is, how dedicated he is, his kindness. The only negative thing I've ever heard said about Chris is that he's too kind, which tells you there's really a problem with the rest of us, not with him. You know, I just think that Chris has reinvented himself within the city many times. Obviously went from chief of streets to chief of staff most recently, and has worked, I mean, countless hours. We, the city, owe his family a very substantial debt at this point, I would say. But just the fact that he has been such a core, dependable part of the city under Nino, under Walsh, under Janey, under Wu, I just, I think for someone whose fingerprints are all over the operations of a lot of our city departments, Chris is really up there, and I'm, as somebody who I go to with just like, wait, how does this work, or what was the history of this, or whatever, I know that I'm gonna miss him, and I think a lot of people in the hall are gonna miss him, and I pause to just say all these things because I think that we all know that like public service for the city, just left of the limelight on cabinet can be sometimes a little invisible and thankless, and I also think that there are some hands that helped hold the city together operationally as we went through both the public health emergency of COVID-19 and the repeated political transition that we've had over the last couple of years. And I think all three of these people, Justin, Selena, and Chris, were those hands holding up the city in the meantime. So I just want to express my thanks and thank all the councilors for signing these resolutions today. So thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Councilor Bach. The chair calls on Councilor Braden. Councilor Braden, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. President. I rise to give mention to two individuals. I'll start with Lydia Edwards, not Lydia Edwards, Lydia Roberts, sorry, wrong name. Lydia is an owner of one of what we call our legacy businesses in Alston, Brighton, and Brighton Centre. She's run a hair salon there for 55 years and is retiring, and thankfully, it's a woman-owned business, and thankfully one of the women who has worked in the business with her over many years is now going to continue that presence in Brighton Centre, and we wish her a long and happy and healthy retirement. The other person I want to mention this afternoon is Jason Desrosier, who is the community organiser at the Alston Brighton CDC. Many of you are familiar with Jason. He's a frequent flyer here in the hall when he comes to advocate for affordable housing and equity, and just to really push the envelope in terms of advocating for more affordable housing in Alston, Brighton, and across our city. One of the things he's been instrumental in doing has been holding boot camp workshops for residents of Alston Brighton to prepare them to participate in the Article 80 process and to be strong voices for a more inclusive and equitable development in our neighbourhood. So it's with great gratitude that I wish Jason all the best. He's been at the CDC for 7.5 years, and we're going to miss him. We miss all the good trouble he's been getting us into over the years, and I wish him all the best in his next chapter. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Braden. We're going to memorials. We will adjourn our meeting in memory of the following individuals: for Councilor Bach, Peg Doherty, Sidney Sid Topol; for Councilor Baker, Robert McLean, Carol Rourke, Frankie McKinnon; for Councilor Edwards, William Bill Carter; for Councilor Lujan, Robertson Lallen; for the body, Leonard Alkins, NAACP Boston Branch President. A moment of silence, please. The chair moves that when the council adjourns today, it does so in memory of those individuals mentioned. We are scheduled to meet again in the Ionella Chamber on Wednesday, April 27th at 12 noon. All in favor of adjournment, please say aye. Aye. The council is adjourned. Thank you.